What's up, Facebook Live?
Is it good?
I think so. Are we good? Anyone out there?
Nope.
I'm gonna
getting there.
listen.
I was busy playing with the camera.
Nothing yet. Well, for those of you guys out there listening, and an hour or later, we do have some people in the garage. We see some exits here, but we have some special guests that I don't know if I'm allowed to mention, but they are kind of behind the featured cigar tonight. So Macanudo Inspirado Red. So we'll be talking about that tonight. We'll be drinking Bulleit 10-year. Well, apparently time, I guess.
Yep.
Here.
I'm just apparently not a fan of our page, which is awesome.
That
There it is.
explains a lot.
Yeah. Shoot.
Are you supposed to be like one of the ones running this?
Yeah.
What's up, Nate? What's up, Jonathan?
Ray just messaged you, no podcast today, question mark.
Ray,
Live, Ray.
Now.
You're
We
not
have a
here.
guy, Ray, a friend of ours. He is in Hong Kong usually, or Vietnam. He lives in Hong Kong, so he listens in the morning on Thursday morning. It's pretty awesome.
Mr. David Willard.
Makes the drive go by quicker.
That's right. Jonathan Aaron is sitting across from you, Jacob. He said, "Hey, Jonathan."
No.
Jonathan's
Not
not
bad.
obviously, clearly.
Yeah.
See Joe.
I just see names and start shouting out. So.
Forrest Gump.
And I'm going to do quick shares here before we get started, and then we'll start the recording. So everyone out there so far listening on Facebook Live, please share it. So I'm going to share it like 18 times apparently.
And we also announced tonight, like over post, that we're doing our giveaway tonight. So for you guys listening, make sure you tag 3 friends underneath this post, and then like it, and make sure you're liking the page as well. And then that enters you into getting a free bottle of what we are drinking tonight, Bulleit 10-year bourbon that's actually engraved. Dustin got a bottle engraved for us that says Bourbon and BS Podcast on the back of it, so thanks again, Dustin, for doing that for us. So you have until next Tuesday, the 9th, I believe, to do all that and enter in, and then we'll choose the winner next Wednesday. So I guess stand by until we get onto this.
Sharing much stuff, try to get more people involved here, so and we can go ahead.
Well, we're at 9, so.
Well,
Nate said he
just wait, buddy.
just got done tagging on Instagram.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just do that.
Sure. Yeah, we're gonna start this. We also have some of the noisiest chairs.
I think I could just run my trail and just stick it in the cup holder.
Cool.
All right.
Ready?
Sure.
Hello, everyone, and happy Whiskey Wednesday. Welcome to the Bourbon and BS Podcast, episode 35. We got a lot to talk about tonight, but first we'll mention the fact that we are sipping on Bulleit 10-year whiskey, bourbon whiskey. We're going to be smoking the Macanudo
Inspirado Red.
Yep.
Red.
And then our topic of this evening, if you the first-time listener, we do our whiskey of the night, we do a cigar of the evening, we also do our topic.
Correct.
It's either dealing with life events or personal problems or whatever we see fit, normally not political or religious, but
And I'm Jay Sanders and you're Steve Crane.
Right. I don't think that works with us because of our voices.
You didn't do the intros, so I just want to get it out there.
Well, I mean, we sometimes and we sometimes don't, but
You're Jay Sanders.
Right, and then you're Steve Crane.
And we have
Chay Miller. What's up?
Welcome, thanks for having me, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we're actually matching tonight, which is awesome.
Not planned, by the way.
Not planned, but we're both wearing Hotel Tango, the artisan distillery.
I would have worn like a red shirt if I knew.
I didn't know either.
It's kind of bullshit.
Steve, I got your smoking tenement.
Yeah.
I like that.
Dustin is matching
Dustin
is a different color.
repping a different year there.
But it's awesome because I didn't actually get to talk about it, last time, but just short story. Chay and I went with a group of veterans. I went with you guys really, and we did a barrel pick at a small distillery in downtown Indianapolis, Hotel Tango, and it was an amazing experience. Pretty much my first barrel pick, and it was really cool for being how small it was. But we can talk about that later. But before we really dive into it, we always like to thank our sponsors, Steve, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So always, who's providing the cigars of the night is going to be Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. And then the BS Cigar Company, as always, Brian, Steve, thank you. You guys made an awesome product. And I did hear, right, that we did get the big gold.
Yeah, we just got a shipment in of the BS Gold Toro. We got more of those in. And I was smoking one about halfway through it, but it seems to be very, very good as far as construction and everything else. So I'm happy with that. And then, yeah, the 758 Gold is also, which is now back in the 10. 1,000 of those for the moment. So.
If you're a big cigar lover, if you like really big cigars, that is definitely one that you need to put on your list to come and grab at the Tinderbox sometime. Great medium body cigar. And then our last sponsor, of course, thank you Altadis for providing our second cigar of the evening tonight, which is going to be the H. Upman, AJ Fernandez.
Yeah, so that's just kind of like one of our favorites, and we're cycling through 35 episodes. I think they jumped in at like episode 10, 15, 20, something like that, so we're just...
Have we done the Robusto, though? I didn't even know we had those in. We've lost count at this point.
I don't think we have.
We've done the Toro and the Torpedo, right?
And Nate was asking if we'd done the Inspirato Red, but
I don't think we
have. I don't think we have. I did a Tasty Tuesday for the Tinderbox, so he might be thinking of that. I did a Tasty Tuesday with
and I may have reposted it on our
go.
social media, so
bingo.
Is there anything we missed? Sometimes I forget what our intro consists of.
If you're in the Columbus area, so Wednesday, we're going to do a special taping, which we have to figure out. Next Wednesday, we will not be recording live. It'll probably be on maybe Sunday.
Yeah, or Monday,
Yeah, so it might be Monday night. We'll let everyone know, but we've got a prime rib dinner on Fido's patio right next door to Tinderbox. Gurkha's going to be there, so we've got Christina, who's our rep, and then Juan Lopez, who is the natural guy. Brian from the Tinderbox has known him for years. He's been in the industry for a very long time. So they're both going to be there. We're going to have some raffle giveaways. It's going to be prime rib, vegetable, potato. You get a cocktail or pint of your choice. And then also 2 Gurkha cigars. They've got stuff like backpacks, cutters, hats, all that good stuff. So
it's always a great event.
We've got, I think we have like 15 tickets left for that. So
or 2 Wednesdays.
No, it's a week from today. So we have 15 tickets left for that. So we got a max capacity there based on space and menu. So let us know if you guys want to. You can call into the shop or stop in.
Really? Yep.
Yeah. Pick up some Macanudo Inspirato Reds while you're there.
We actually also have a giveaway going. Our second giveaway that we just announced over social media.
That's right.
Did I already? That was a live that I mentioned it on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm forgetting stuff. Anyways, we have the Bulleit 10-year again, what we're sipping on tonight. So we're actually, this is kind of a silent favorite for Steve and I, really. And, we've never done it. And so we love it so much that we're actually going to give a listener, you guys, a bottle. The way we're gonna, give away. So the way you can enter in to do that, you go onto Facebook or Instagram, which is our 2 main platforms. You like the page and follow us on Instagram, and you find the post that we posted. Tag 3 friends. Obviously, you must be 21 and older to enter. I don't think we have any younger.
Don't be that guy and do that if you're not. Yeah. That's just annoying.
Yeah. Anyways, so. Our good buddy Dustin was gracious enough to get one engraved for us that actually says Bourbon and BS podcast on it. So again, tag 3 friends and the post that you see. We're going to give you a week to do that, and then we'll
see that at all.
Pretty much.
No.
You can see your hands.
My hands in the way. That's all right.
We'll definitely.
It's engraved.
Yeah. Well, hold it up to the microphone so they can see it. Yeah.
We'll name off the winner next Wednesday. So.
Oh, okay. There it is.
They can't see it.
But
now I can see it.
This is our second giveaway. Nick got our first giveaway. He absolutely loved it. Good guy. We got to meet him, so that was an awesome experience for us. But yeah.
I had one other quick thing that I like to kind of show the grasp of this so far, the Bourbon and BS podcast. We stopped taping last week, and we had over 1,000 views on the Facebook Live. So whether you were listening the whole time, you were listening part of it, 3 seconds, whatever it is, I don't know how they do all that. But we had over 1K, which was double what we had prior to that. And then also I got a call in the shop for a bundle of BS Gold Toros. Nick Fox. Nick Fox.
Yeah.
I had it written down and I don't know.
But it's at the shop.
Yeah, I think it went away that day. I think it went on his postage. But anyways, he should have those cigars by the time he's listening to this on Friday. He listens on the audio on the train to and from work.
Man.
He lives in New Jersey. He has never been to Tinderbox. He doesn't know any of us. He actually, Bill Binder, who you've talked to, Jake, and you guys have like tagged each other, commented back and forth.
He always gives us a shout out.
Yeah, well, that's how this happened. So Nick was kind of following on Instagram. Bill Binder saw us on there, and he said he's been listening since like February or March.
It's awesome.
And so he finally was like, you know what? He smoked like the Nat Sherman Townhouse Nicaragua we did. He went to the townhouse and actually got some, like tried that. Ended up buying a box at one point. So then he started listening more and more. He's like, you guys keep talking about this BS cigar, and it sounds like something I'd like. And so I shipped him a bundle of those, and I shipped him. Hopefully, if he's gotten it by now, he saw the extra BS silver in there to try that. So Nick, hopefully you like those, and give us a shout on any of the social media stuff as well. And we'll be happy to ship you this Bulleit Bourbon 10 if you win that.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was really cool. I like that. It's showing kind of the scope of where we're at now as far as what we're gathering.
We thank Bill for always tagging us. He's got a huge following. And we obviously would love to get him on here, but he's busy he's working on his TV show, so he's traveling around the nation. So
You guys are like New Jersey, now Indiana.
Yeah, so
The trip I was telling the guys earlier, we were on
I can
the
see
trip
it
to
though.
El Tango. We were
got bald heads and beard.
Bald
Yeah.
guys, like, we're kind of.
Jake is surrounded by some handsome dudes right there.
You guys
That
just
is
need
awesome
hair.
to hear. I mean, being a local group and you guys having fans out in New Jersey and then running into them in Indiana, that was really cool.
That was a really interesting experience. Like we went, I know we're kind of getting off topic. We're already 8 minutes in. We've had a lot of stuff to talk about though. But when I went with Chay and Phil, we were all traveling together, and we stopped in Richmond, Indiana, and we walk into this little liquor store, and this guy, was his name Walden? I'm pretty sure he's friends with Eli Fuhrer.
Yeah.
And anyways, he's like, "Are you guys from like the Bourbon and Bullshit group or whatever? Whatever it like be." I'm like, "Oh, Bourbon and BS." I like didn't resonate it like at first, but he's like, "He pointed at you and said, Chase Steve."
I'm telling you, look at the screen. It's absolutely.
I know. And now, and he's like, "Well, you're Jake," and so we grabbed a picture, and that was a really neat experience.
Did you stand in for me, Chet?
No, I didn't. I thought,
you're taller though.
Yeah, I thought I'd let the celebrity have it all. He was taking care of it.
You're welcome to do it. That's fine.
Yeah, it might now after today.
Just lower your voice a little bit.
I got to get a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
But, and then
you don't look down.
Then I was met a guy today, with a bottle of bourbon, and he said he watched me last week on the podcast, and I said that's interesting.
You didn't know there was a camera on you. Right?
So I'm actually gonna be on it tonight, but we got a good look on it.
I like it.
I like it.
It's awesome.
Winning, Matt says.
Well, we want to get into the whiskey. I know we've had a huge intro. We've got a lot.
Do I need to save the intro?
We've had a lot of stuff to talk about, man. But it's good. It's good. We're growing.
Yes.
Yay. So,
What?
you're always full of enthusiasm,
Yeah.
Steve. So, again, we're sipping on the Bulleit 10-year.
I'm not yet, by the way.
Well,
Shit.
yeah, I don't know what you're doing. You're
Drinking.
behind the 8 ball. Well, anyways, so we got this tonight. We haven't done it for a while, we haven't drank it for a while actually.
No,
Steve
we
got
haven't.
it for my birthday this past year, so
We had it in the garage one night, I think,
long
before
time.
we were doing the podcast. Yeah, you posted on a Whiskey Wednesday, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, but it's super good stuff. Bulleit whiskey. I'm sure you've seen it on the shelves somewhere, whether it's in a bar, a store, whatever. It's normally got an orange label. I do like their marketing though, because it's kind of like an old school bottle with
Oh, for sure.
kind of what would you call that? It's not really an engraving, but almost like a blown out lettering.
Yeah, it's like a stamp. I don't know how they do that with glass, but it's like it's raised in a glass bottle.
But it's a super cool bottle. Definitely one to put around the house after you're done drinking it and take the label off. But it's a 10-year bourbon whiskey, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. It's 91.2 proof, so it's 45.6% alcohol by volume. And before I read about it tonight, Steve, I didn't know that this was actually MGP juice. You know, we've talked about MGP a
Explain that again, though, will you?
So MGP, Midwest Grain Processors in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, is a massive, massive distillery that a lot of newer distilleries and even slightly older distilleries have been sourcing their whiskey from them for years. And come to find out that, you know, Bulleit came out with this in 2013. Obviously, I don't think that they were new enough at the time, so obviously they sourced it, and here we are today. And after I read that, it's like no wonder why I like it. Because it's creamy, it's rich, it's got, off the nose, it's got probably some, well, I think what I smell is caramel, a little bit of oak in there, obviously, and there's a weird berry note behind that I'm getting there.
Weird berry?
Well, just like I just say weird because that's a way to describe it.
Yeah.
I don't know, Chay.
It's a southern region. It's a southern
Maybe it's a
berry.
lava berry.
Yeah.
California.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I always got notes of vanilla from it.
Dustin says he has notes of vanilla. I get it.
I always think it's just super smooth.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
for
agree
sure.
with that too.
Super smooth,
I think
super
Mike, once he
sweet.
gets in there, it's nice.
It's one of those, you know, it's kind of like Eagle Rare, and I say kind of because that's my daily drinker, and I absolutely love Eagle Rare. I think I've said that enough times, but with this, I think it comes up to a close third between, you know, you look at 10-year whiskeys, and a lot of people think 10 years is around that threshold, like 8 to 12 is that threshold of the, you know, the prime years that it can be aged in barrels. And I think between like 10 years, I think it goes Eagle Rare, Henry McKenna 10 from Heaven Hill, and Bulleit 10. So I think between those three. But if you, we should do like a blind taste test one night and see what we think.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, you
I'd
know.
love to get. You always mention Anne. She'd be one to have on for that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's not smooth as no Eagle Rare. It doesn't have it, you know, the bite that the Eagle Rare aroma has.
I think.
Or McKenna. I think it's a nice.
McKenna for sure. I think this is a lot smoother than Henry McKenna 10.
Henry McKenna's got like a nice spice. It's that balance between spice and sweet.
Yeah.
But I think Eagle Rare just knocks both of them kind of out of the park just with how rich it is.
This is a close second though, I think.
Well, yeah.
And you can get this.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Well, until you told everybody
So
it
you
was an
can-
MGP product, and now
shit.
we're not going to be able to get it at all. So.
Well, now our bourbon group's screwed. Jay.
If you drink bourbon, I mean, that's one of the things we talk about sometimes with that is that you see Bulleit, and I'm not a huge fan of just a regular Bulleit bourbon. It just there's something about the flavor. I can't drink a bunch of it, which bothers me. But it's one of those things that this is one where you see Bulleit, and you may just walk right by it.
Yeah.
Like, you think Bulleit bourbon, right? You say MGP, like you don't realize what it is exactly.
That's how we did the
I
first
know.
time.
I mean, it's
Remember
like,
that?
I'm not gonna fucking buy a bottle of like what is it, $41.99
Yeah,
on the shelf
before
here.
tax.
I'm gonna buy a $45 bottle of
Right.
Bulleit. Like I'm good. I'll spend my $45 elsewhere. But once you try it, I mean, it's definitely worth that comparatively to everything else out there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I normally stay with the Bulleit Rye. That's about the only Bulleit product
That's
I
very
do,
good.
which is good. But I mean, a friend of mine just showed me a bottle of this. He'd never seen it before.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of surprising you guys are doing it tonight because he asked me what I thought, and I'm like, I've never had it, but
Is this your first time?
yeah.
Oh,
it's
no
actually-
shit.
yeah,
That's
it's not my
awesome.
first
And he's a
Bulleit,
huge
but
bourbon guy
first
too, so
so-
it's nice to see that something that's even available, you know, readily available that he's never had before.
Have you ever had anything with that much like weird berry in it? Like as far as like the notes?
I don't know. I'm trying to feel like the weird berry, the lullaberry,
It's
What
Matt Bailey says
Yeah.
elderberry. I don't know if that's a thing.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
Is that a thing?
I have someone that worked with it. She's from
Is that an
went
off?
to school in Cal. It's
It's an
like a
offshoot
blend
of weird
between
berry.
a blackberry and like a
thing.
raspberry.
It's a real thing.
I don't know where it is, but it's real.
It's related to the weird berry.
Joke's on you, Steve.
I'm learning.
I mean,
I like that.
obviously,
Yeah.
I didn't even know what the hell a weird berry was.
It's just an aged berry, elderberry.
I say
Yeah.
weird. I say weird because
It's around nursing.
I don't know how else to describe it. Like there's something in there
Yeah.
that's like berry, and I don't know what it is. So that's why I said,
Berry?
I just said that.
You have to be pretty
It's
good
like
to pick that
berry.
out, though. You know,
What?
I'd be worried if you could just drink that and start telling me the type of berries it was.
I don't know.
I like it.
No, it's very good, very good.
Raspberries? I don't know.
Yeah.
Raspberries?
Pick a berry.
not
Come on,
raspberries.
pick a berry.
You did weird berry.
I don't know. What? you get out of it, Steve? You never.
Get out of what?
What do you get out of the whiskey?
Podcast?
Not the jokes, because you're a dick, and I understand that we needed to make jokes there. So
We didn't need to. No, I like it. Schnozberry, someone said. I already heard that though.
Fell off my dinosaur with that one, Nate.
Nah. My elderberry. So old. I don't know, man. It's good. I think it is. Got a little bit of sweetness, but it's very, very smooth. That's what I get. Now, I have had several sips of it, and I don't know if it's going with the Macanudo or not, but as far as like a little bit fuller body cigar is bringing out a little bit, not bite, but kind of like a richness to it. So as I'm having more of it, it's kind of lingering on the tongue and in the back of the throat for me.
It's definitely kind of like an oil. I mean, what do you? I was going to ask you this, Chay, because it's like we don't have a lot of, kind of, not like veteran whiskey connoisseurs, kind of, but like people with big collections, such as like yourself and I. And I was wondering, like, would you recommend this to like somebody in the group or like our bourbon group that's never had it?
Oh, definitely.
Because
I'm trying to think of myself because a friend of mine just, who's getting into it was asking about it, and it was kind of one of those things about Bulleit, but I'd never had it, so I kind of felt bad. Like, what do you tell him? And I actually was like, I've never had it. You might want to steer towards. And he went and got a bottle of Henry McKenna. So I would definitely recommend people getting. I mean, especially where we're at now, where it's hard to find some of these, $37 bourbons that are just to fly off the shelf within a couple hours. So I mean, if they're out there, I know they're out there. I've seen a couple stores in the past couple days, but
yeah.
I would definitely recommend it. I mean, sometimes I think I might add in there for the daily drinker.
Now let me ask you, because Chay he's got quite a collection. He's very much an enthusiast of bourbons, for sure. I mean, like they don't know you, right?
No, yeah.
Enthusiast, connoisseur. I hate the word connoisseur, but I mean, anyways, because that's all you hear any day in the cigar shop. Well, I'm not really a connoisseur and everything. It's like, yeah, no one is, man. Like,
my wife calls it hoarding, but it's all right.
probably obsession would be another word, right?
Yeah,
yeah, that's.
Looks like a.
But why? My point is why did you always pass this up? Is it because of the Bulleit thing, or is it another reason?
Well, it's like I'm, the people listening know me. I'm a huge Buffalo Trace person, so that's kind of where I gravitate towards. So, if I were to walk in, I would see an Eagle Rare, kind of like Jake, and I had $30-some to spend, and my
he just did it the other day.
Eagle Rare, Eagle Rare or Buffalo Trace is there, as crazy as it seems. I'll probably grab that. So it's just basically like, I guess it comes down to not trying it, which we always tell people that are getting into bourbon anyways, that that's kind of one of the biggest mistakes to make, because you have to like try something before you know you don't like it. But I mean, I think we're always, what you prefer, you kind of get down that road, and sometimes it's hard to get off that.
I think it's about the fact that we've talked about, Steve, about how we gravitate towards things that we can't always have on the shelf. Like, we had so much Buffalo Trace, and then it was gone forever, and then we had Eagle Rare and Buffalo Trace on for months and months and months on the shelves. And then we got used to it, and then we started looking for like E.H. Taylor and other rare stuff that maybe we could find. And then when the Eagle Rare and the Buffalo Trace was gone, then we were like, where did it all go?
Well, Eagle Rare's still at that point. I mean, I was talking to Dave over the Kroger here, and he's got like a full shelf of Wellers, which you couldn't find up until 3-4 weeks ago. He had 2 boxes of Buffalo Trace. Yeah. He had 1 box of Blends, he had 1 box of Eagle Rare, and he said they were both gone like 10-15 minutes. And I mean, he even admitted that. I was like, you haven't had Eagle Rare forever unless I've been missing. He's like, it's been like 3 months. Yeah. So he got it all in today, but then the Blanton's is gone, and he's still selling it for like $60. Yeah. Like Ohio's still $60, where someone just was in Indiana, I think.
Yeah, and
it was like 80.
Yeah, 80.
It was 80. Oh yeah.
Go up, and it depends on the state. It's a great thing about being in Ohio is it's regulated, and you can get the best price. But the bad thing about it is it's hard to find.
Yeah, it's hard to find.
I think the state of commerce, like the liquor control, is starting to figure out that like Ohio is huge bourbon lovers. So I mean,
I wish Dave at Kroger. He's an older gentleman and definitely has no filter, which is awesome. He doesn't even drink, but he's just like, those. I don't know if he said bastards or not, but he's like those SOPs, the whatever, agencies, like they don't like me very much, because I was like, why, you just call and yell at him? He's like, oh yeah, all the time. He's like, I call him every week and I just yell at him about not getting my order, and it's like, like he knows how it works, but he's still just that like kind of crotchety man where he's just like, this is ridiculous. So we had a question though. Nate Hale said, would you guys drink it more if it were about $10 less?
Oh, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you're coming in at a $30 price tag, or even the same price as Eagle Rare, and both of them take that whole rare part out of it, if you will, you know what I mean? It's not just the name, but it is really tough to find Eagle Rare. If you had Bulleit 10 every day of the week on the shelf, and you had Eagle Rare every day on the shelf, would you buy both, or which one?
Eagle
If
Rare.
it was a store pick, I'd be in trouble.
I know.
I agree. It comes down to, again, it's like I think Jake said earlier, is you can go see this in a lot of stores. So a lot of people who are like, they may be veteran drinkers of bourbon or just new to it, they see it and they don't think it's
They just
that
pass
big
it
of a
by.
deal.
Yeah.
And I think the people that are into it, I think we have to expand our horizon and the people that are getting into it, the same thing is let them people know that things are good. I mean, there's a lot of bourbons that people pass up every day.
I think $40 is probably my threshold to just try something. Like with bourbons anymore, like a while back, like bourbons were always like 40 or less, I felt like, especially in Ohio. Like we're going back 5-10 years ago. But now it's like $40 for a bottle of bourbon is not out of the question. And I think, but that's like one where it's like you haven't tried it and no one really knows about it or whatever. That's about you start hitting $50 and I've never heard of it. Mm-hmm. That might be a reason that's still sitting on the shelf.
But that's what I was going to say about the fact that, with that $10 range, if you're just getting into bourbon, I think that $30, $30 and less is where people that are just starting out with bourbon that's their cap. So you hit that 40 mark, and even though that we're used to seeing these prices, and really $40 isn't anything compared to some of these bottles on a regular basis, I think for somebody that's just getting into it, I think that's a hard sell. I think if you drop it down to $10 less,
right,
and then you're competing with Henry McKenna and Eagle Rare, and then even Buffalo Trace and Weller after tax is $28.
Yeah.
So
I just look. $40 for me even is not like an everyday sipper. You know what I mean? Especially like in the garage where you're sharing it and it's gone within a couple hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is. That night you just blew through $40 worth of bourbon. I'd much rather do, even though it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but again, depending on how often you're drinking, it's one of those things where it's like $25 versus $40. It does add up. But the way I look at it too is that when you go in there, if you've had a recommendation for it, $40 is not out of the question.
No, that's like Henry McKenna though. I mean, if everybody remembers, a year and a half ago, Henry McKenna was on the shelves like crazy, and I think it won an award in San Francisco.
Yeah, and then it was all gone.
And now it's the same thing where it flew off the shelf. So I think this is like a product where I think it just needs to get caught on the right place, and it could fly off the shelf just like you see Henry McKenna, just like you see Eagle Rare. If you go back a few years, you could find Eagle Rare pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Not just in Ohio, but other places. My brother-in-law is a big bourbon guy, lives in Massachusetts. A year and a half ago, Eagle Rare all over the shelves. Now it's become like we are here. So I think it's like a matter of opportunity too. Like something like this could, at that price point, if it gets the right award or gets in front of the right people and it gets rated, that's how we are. We end up going out to things that everybody enjoys or wants. You know what I mean?
And people even think that Henry McKenna is going to be the next Eagle Rare, probably in 10 years.
I mean, and you look right now. If you ask, call a place or stop by and say you have anything good. I've seen places in Ohio that have Henry McKenna behind the shelf now. That just kind of funny to me that it wasn't like that a year and a half ago. And
no,
you see that with a $27 Buffalo Trace.
And a year ago, you saw Eagle Rare I know I saw Eagle Rare sitting on the shelf. That giant eagle up there on Stelzer.
Yeah.
They always had 6 bottles, and we always passed it up. And then it was gone. It's like, okay, well, we got to wait a year for anything to ever come back.
Well, at least in our region, though, at least in Ohio, you guys travel more than I do. I mean, just in this Columbus and vicinity, if you see something going actually to become more rare, like Eagle Rare, or Henry McKenna hasn't been on the shelf much, and then all of a sudden it starts showing up.
Yeah.
There's that period where it becomes normal. Like now you see Weller, and Weller is not flying like it was when it first hit like a month ago, right?
It's still flying. That antique is still flying. It's moving,
but
that was special reserve. But
it's funny that you bring that up because I think it's moving, but it's moving out. If you look at some people listen and people in the room here know about the secondary market.
Yeah.
A lot of that 107 that we're taking baths in and showering right now is getting pushed out of the area. If you were to do this 2 months ago, people would have been standing in line
Did you buy any of that 107 one? They had 2 bottles left of the 107.
I got one for Phil. I went up there with both bottles I was getting for Phil, obviously, and I went up to, what's his name again? Dave. I went up to him, and so I had him, and he kind of just grabs it and like takes it off the side, and he's like, only 1 per, and I was like, you know how like he's kind of that grouchy old man, so I was like, all right, well, there's not a sign back there that says 1 per, so.
Yeah.
Not this, normally it's in a shopping cart right there with the refrigerator that says 1 per.
But
I mean, you talked about, before we move on, as if I could, as you were talking about with Bulleit, they just came out with the new tattoo bottles.
Yeah.
So what is that exactly? I haven't seen that.
So it's kind of it's kind of just a new marketing technique, kind of back in the 60s and the 70s. Remember we talked about, bourbon was kind of on the bottom of everybody's list. It was all vodka and clear spirits. Mm-hmm. And so they started doing like small batches and single barrels. Well, Bulleit has done these kind of rare bottles that have different designs that are etched on the back.
Oh, okay.
So you can look through the glass and it's got these different designs. They're cool, but it's the same whiskey. It's just a collector's bottle. It's kind of like what Woodford does when the
Jack Daniels has done that. You know what I mean? Yeah, everyone does. That's great.
Yeah, so they've started that. They're really, really cool. The designs are awesome, and I believe the artist that they got that from is out in California.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know the name, but they did a great job on the bottles. So they're on the rise, though. I mean, it's crazy because just before I was able to drink, like it was always like Jack Daniels, Maker's Mark, and Jim Beam, and now like Bulleit's kind of introduced that. You could say it's well whiskey, but it's still, it's getting sold. They're doing a great job, and I think they're building a new distillery. They have plans to build a new distillery in the next 5 or 10 years. So
really,
which is going to be crazy.
And there's a lot of bars that showcase that as they're like mixing bourbon. They're doing a lot of the mixing stuff. I've seen that.
Which one? Bulleit?
Oh yeah.
Oh, for sure.
A lot of times the mixing bourbon where they're doing that market. So, and I've had those drinks before. Mix like a rye is a huge one.
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity. Like it just needs, like a lot of these bourbons that are really good. Is people just know about them. Is to get that break. Like we always need is 1 break before you.
Dustin said they have. I forgot about they have their barrel strength too, which is also really, really good. And I believe it's around 110 proof, 114 something.
I believe you're right.
But yeah, it's
What's
great.
the price on that one?
It's around 50. It's $49.99.
Close to this.
But it sometimes comes in that really cool sleeve or whatever. If you've ever seen that, it's like it's not a burlap sleeve, but it's kind of like a canvas. Sleeve. But yeah.
I think Bulleit's good. I think they're still newer, I'd imagine, right? I mean, they're not that old of a distillery.
No.
But they have blown up. I don't know exactly how they did it. One of the things they were featured in is kind of corny a little bit. Not only the movie, but the whole Bulleit thing was that Sylvester Stallone movie. You guys seen that? Bullet to the Head.
Rambo?
Oh yeah, I have seen
that. No, it wasn't in Rambo.
No, I have seen
that. Might be the new Rambo.
I have seen that. Yeah.
Eric
has it on Plex.
Yeah, Bullet to the Head. So Sylvester Stallone did one of a Stallone movie, basically, is what I would describe it as.
Action, no reason, just a lot of guns.
But so he'd go to bars, and it was one of those things where he would just like put money down on the bar in the movie, and he would carry around a bottle of Bulleit.
Right. It's a best line too. It's like she's like, well, you're not allowed to bring your own drinks here, sir. And he's like, well, do you got this? She's like, no. And he's like, all right then, give me a glass. It's the best line in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So he throws money. Anyways, so Bullet to the Head, Bulleit Bourbon. It was.
Now he's got his own stuff.
He does. It's coming out, which I'm interested to see.
God, we've gotten so off topic with a lot of stuff today, but it's good.
No, it's good. We're talking about Bulleit Bourbon, so it's
good conversation.
Yeah. So Dustin's pointing the cigar. So we did have 2 people from General Cigar. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention them or not by name. I don't know. So I'm not going to.
You mentioned them on the live.
Not by name.
No. You didn't?
He did because he chimed in on the live.
Oh.
Anyways.
Well, all right.
Yeah. But we had, I won't say the name, but we had our general cigar rep, who they own Macanudo, and then we had the brand marketing manager, ambassador, and she was here. And so they actually, they service our shop. They're going to be in the shop tomorrow to visit us, but they dropped off these Macanudo Inspirato Reds, which, as I said, I think that's what Nate was referring to. Actually, Nate Hale was referring to. I did a Tasty Tuesday, and for the Tinderbox at Easton page, and this is one of the ones that I would kind of say that whole line of like, this is not your dad's Macanudo, because everyone thinks Macanudo typically, unless you smoked a lot of their line, you think of like the Cafe series, which is extremely mild. You see it everywhere. It's like one of their top selling, if not the top selling cigar for General. Very, very mild, and comes in different sizes. People even call by name. Like, do you have the Portofino? Do you have the Hampton Courts? Stuff like that. So that's that line. This is definitely different. It's fuller bodied, and I was actually shocked because I had to pull it back up here, but when the brand marketing manager, marketing ambassador, all that, she was describing it, and when she was rattling off the age of the tobacco in the cigar, I mean, it was all 6, 8, 12, all these different year tobaccos. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
So, like it says here, this is on
It gives me a new appreciation for it a little bit.
well, and that's where you do it. I mean, it's got an Ecuadorian Habano. They call it Ligero. That's probably not the top tier priming Ligero, but it might be up there. But it, because that's a tough wrapper leaf. But Habano Ligero cover or wrapper leaf, and then it's the it contains Nicaraguan and Honduran. So you've got Nicaraguan tobacco that's aged 12 years, a 10-year-old Honduran filler, and then another 5-year one. So I mean, you've got some very, very aged tobacco in this, which is, it's, I hate to say this, but a lot of times, much like we're saying about the Bulleit thing, you have very good bourbon, you have very good whiskey, and you have very good tobacco in a cigar, and they're branching off of a brand that in the everyday is kind of known for that Cafe series, which is extremely popular, but it's almost like and I like it, but it's like the Bud Light or Miller Lite of beers. When you're in this whole world of bourbons, whole world of beers, whole world of cigars, it's such an everyday smoke that if you're a regular smoker, typically you're not going to be smoking a Macanudo Hyde Park Cafe. Right. But it sells more than anything else because the occasional smokers are eating it up all day long. They wouldn't know what to do with this, but they might try it and say, man, I really like this because it says Macanudo. Where on the flip side of that, much like this whole Bulleit thing, the reason that you might have passed up the Bulleit 10 is because it says Bulleit. That's where like this is. You might walk right by this and go, hey, I got this new Macanudo. And you're like, I'm not really into Macanudos. You know what I mean? Like, because you're saying it's kind of a lower end to you. Yeah. Because you normally smoke like medium, full body. You're smoking like $10 to $15 cigars. You're all those reasons that when it comes down to it, you talk about a blind taste test, Jake. You do this, and you're not gonna guess that this is gonna be having a Macanudo band on it, in my opinion.
Well, explain to like our first-time listeners and Chay about the fact that what does like mild, medium, and full body mean, and talk about the fact. I think Ligero is one of the leaves that is very not prominent, but very distinguishing of a cigar because that's where the strength comes from. So for our new listeners and everyone, if you could explain those things.
All right, and that's one of the things that's interesting about the reason that I didn't want to mention by name or anything like that, and why they are some of our reps, and especially some of the people that are higher up in the companies with the FDA regulations. They're not supposed to be on podcasts or anything like that. They're not supposed to talk to customers at all about mild, sweet.
You're not allowed to say mild anymore?
No, that's
why?
Because it's kind of like, I compare it very easily to like Marlboros. When this all came through, when it all came through with the Tobacco Act of 2009, they weren't allowed to call it Marlboro Lights, Marlboro Ultra Lights, because basically that was conveying to people, according to the FDA, because people are stupid.
It's not bad. It's not bad for you.
And that
I talk to you every day, Steve.
You know very well. And that's where we're going to get into the whole politically correct versus being polite thing.
Yeah, fuck that.
You're neither. But that's where you can't say mild because, or like, Marlboro Lights, Ultra Lights, you can't say that because it's conveying that it's not as bad for you. It's kind of like diet cigarettes. So a mild cigar is like a diet cigar. You know what I'm saying? Even though like diet soda has all sorts of crap in it that makes it have no calories and it's sweet. You don't know what that's
what are you supposed to say then instead of mild? What are we supposed to say in the shop?
No, I can say it all day long. I don't care.
But they can?
I think you're just
reps
saying
can't.
Yeah,
they can't market it as
such. So what are they supposed to say though? They can't say light, they can't say mild.
Right.
So what the hell are you
No, not mellow. You can't say any of this stuff.
You can't even say medium, full?
No. Technically you can't.
Interesting.
You can talk about flavor.
You just
you
talk
can
about
this
the leaves.
flavor and all that stuff. Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's, I mean, it's,
Wow.
it is interesting because it's, you know, the dumbing down of America.
Well, let me ask you this on that. Is you know, I used to smoke a lot more than I do now.
Mhm.
It's probably the first cigar I probably had in about 4 years, but.
Okay.
We're supposed to
So
have one on the
I know,
porch, but
you know, I know a little bit, yeah. I know, when I was smoking, they were still talking that. So how do you think that affects like newer smokers when you're trying to get in it? Are you guys at the retail level still using those
Yeah.
terms?
So you can, I guess, on a retail side, as of now. So like, I'm not going to encourage anyone to go online. I mean, if you need to, depending on where you're at, I always, you know, say support your brick and mortar shops and all that stuff. But if you go online, if you look at like reviews and all that stuff, that's where you'll see like a gauge,
Right.
you know, mild to full body. You can see that on there, but they're not allowed to say the word mild. Does that make sense?
No,
so
no,
like
yeah.
Davidoff's, for example, on every one of their boxes, I think they have 4 or 5 like circles, and depending on the blend, they're filled in accordingly.
Oh, that's what it's for?
That's what that's for.
I
And
never knew.
Ray says deja vu, so explain that. I don't know if we're redoing this, but I know you listen a lot, Ray. So.
No, he's talking about the fact that you mentioned like dumbing it down for Americans because he's been on this American kick lately with us talking about guns and everything like that. So I know he'll like that one, but yeah.
He also
Yeah,
lived in
I think
America,
it comes
which he
down to,
also
like,
dumbed it
the
down.
dumbing it down, I
here.
think it comes down to, again, is like you said before, is, take the responsibility out of the person who's doing it. That's kind of funny to me that, someone, obviously I came from somewhere where someone said, oh my gosh, you told me this cigarette was mild, so that's why I've been smoking, and that's why I got sick, and it's your fault because you told me it was mild. Or
Well, there is-
the same thing with ultralight and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, so that it's
Yeah.
taking away the personal, to me it's like taking away the personal responsibility. If you're the one that bought it, you're the one that, cut it, you're the one that started smoking it, so.
I just tweeted about this actually last night. I saw something. It was Now This or whatever. If you guys ever watched that, a lot of their stuff is very, I guess, left wing, politically, oriented.
Mhm.
And so they were talking about how the FDA is going to start cracking down on Juuls now, for God's sakes.
No, they are.
And it's like they were talking about how it was marketed to teens and how like 20% of like teenagers are juuling now or whatever and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And it's like, I kind of bring it back to what we've talked about, how in Columbus we're not able to, you got to be 21
Yeah.
or older
Yeah.
to purchase any tobacco or Juuls now.
Right.
So, but it's like, the biggest thing that bugs me is when people come in and it's like they're veterans or they're young soldiers and it's like they can lay their life down on the line, but they can't. Alcohol's been said and done for a long time, but they can't even get like a can of dip or like cigarettes. It's like, how, I just don't understand when are people going to figure out that people are going to do whatever they want to do without you trying to put like a law or a license or anything behind it. I don't know.
You can't go full anarchy. I mean,
I'm not
say
like,
that, but
I'm not full like,
that's not gonna work.
well,
But laws are there because if you didn't, it's going to deter some people. No matter what law you put into place, people are going to break it.
Yeah, that's the agree. Like so, like it's one of those things. Like I know there's other things in it, but it's like you can go state by state, man. If you don't like the laws of Ohio, you don't like the laws of Columbus, you can move. Like no one's keeping you here, right? Like countries is different a little bit based on as far as like getting there. But can I go back to this whole thing that you asked initially before we go too far off topic?
Yeah, no,
About the hair on the
yeah.
cigar. Remember that? Yeah.
what?
No. It's with
I just
this.
think that's a relative conversation about the Juuls thing.
It very much, like if you're going to go down the FDA route, it absolutely is, because their big thing with that is that they made an attractive product, and also they are able to, at this point, because even though they aren't part of the Tobacco Act now, you're not allowed to do flavors, and that's what they're still doing. So that's what I see Juul and all these other vapes doing. So like we sell in the shop Juuls, and it's like cool cucumber, cool mint, fruit medley. So basically,
One's actually a tobacco.
none of it's tobacco, but you're
No, but it's a tobacco flavor.
Oh yeah, classic tobacco and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you're labeling these flavors of something that is supposedly now being governed under the same body as far as the FDA. So the fact that, now like the Jarms, for example, the Jarms, if anyone's familiar with that, the cloves, they were clove cigarettes. Then when the Tobacco Act came through, they weren't allowed to do flavored clove cigarettes.
No.
So then they took them all off the shelves. Once they were gone, then you saw them reemerge in some areas like our shop as clove cigars. filtered cigars. So instead of 20 in a pack, they come 12 in a pack. They're slightly different size, but very, very close. And they were like DeJarm Blacks, DeJarm Specials, DeJarm Milds, Cherry, Vanilla, Menthol, and a couple others. Right. Now they are, instead of DeJarm Mild, DeJarm Select. This just happened with all of this stuff coming through on the FDA side. So they have DeJarm Special, Select was mild, the cherries are now the ruby, the menthol is emerald, the vanilla is black ivory. So that's how they're being repackaged, much like Marlboro Gold, Marlboro Silver, Marlboro Blue. You can't say any of these things on there because people are stupid.
I don't know.
No, it's
marketing. I know it's marketing, but I didn't mean to go like full anarchy earlier. I know we're getting off topic, but it's like, it's just interesting to me because there's no evidence to say like, either like juuling's bad for you, and I even tweeted, I'm like, I'm not for the whole juuling thing. I guess all I'm trying to say is like, the FDA has ruled basically that you can smoke 2 to 3 cigars a day and still be considered healthy, and not at
no matter what you read.
So it's like,
you can find something that says what you're doing is good for you. But
what's better than not smoking cigars, or what's better than smoking 2 to 3 cigars a day is not smoking.
It's not smoking. Yeah,
and clearly,
I get it.
That's anything.
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to when you're talking about change of like cherry. What we said about cherry was the change of Ruby. I mean, you have to look. I mean, I think tonight here I'm probably the only person here who has kids that you guys know about.
We had that big conversation at the Bourbon.
I have 3 teenagers, so you have to look at it. You say you're dumbing down America or people are stupid, but there is that thing where you tell someone who's young and impressionable that that's cherry. They may be drawn to that.
Absolutely.
That may be the reason it takes them there. And
absolutely.
We've all been drawn to something, and when you're young, you don't really, your mind isn't. I don't think my mind functions perfectly. But when you're young, it's just a way of protecting the youth a little bit more, not giving them something like, oh my gosh, if I get that, it tastes just like cherry, and it may deter a couple people from doing it. Because like you just said, if you had to choose, no cigars is better than 1, 2, 3, or whatever.
I agree with that statement. It's a very, very valid opinion of that, and I see what you're saying. It's just at some point they're gonna say, "What do those taste like?" They're rubies, and someone's gonna be like, "Oh, kind of cherry flavor." And they're gonna be like, "Oh, okay." So it's like I get the point of it, and I mean
it's just
the
word
whole
of mouth
idea.
at that point.
Yeah,
so, and then you're just talking about semantics at that.
To a point, yeah.
I mean, that's all it is.
Well, it's a business side too, and that's where the whole the cigarette companies went way off the deep end as far as printing their own money basically by being able to promote that way. So I get all that stuff, and I mean that's where, as far as that, and Ray was referring to the mild conversation as far as that, because we did talk about it with Kylie not being able to be on. That's much the same. So we have another person in the cigar industry not being able to say that stuff. Well, that's where you were asking as far as Ligero. So if you're watching, I mean basically you have on a tobacco plant, and people use different terms a bit, but at the bottom it's either Viso or Velato. And then you have Seco in the middle. So you have like bigger leaves typically depending on the plant. They're not going to be as strong on the bottom, but you get more tobacco leaf out of it. And then Seco is kind of right there where you would think. It's still very combustible. It's got more flavor, a little more strength to it. Then you're going to get up to the 5th, 6th priming, and that's going to be, primings are the levels. 5th, 6th priming, you're going to be at the Ligero. And that's going to be a stronger leaf. And above that, and I've heard different sides of it. So Casa Fernandez, who we use for the BS Gold, and other companies, you hear Medio Tiempo, which is like the 6th, 7th priming, if you will, like 6.5 or whatever. Like it's like smaller leaves that are more rare on most plants. Right below, like so the flower that they top off when they're growing and all that stuff. We can get into that later. I think we talked about it when I talked about Connecticut, but so at that point, those are the strong ones up top, and that's just nature, right? That's just the sun, the nutrients hitting the plant. They're getting more of the sunlight, therefore they're becoming stronger. And when I say stronger, it is a nicotine level. There's ways to test that, but I mean that's where you're getting the strength from is the nicotine level. And so that's where you're blending all this stuff. Is not only the age of the tobacco, like we mentioned, of the Macanudo Inspirado Red, but you're seeing like as far as where you blend all that. Everyone thinks that a lot of it comes from the wrapper. That's why I said Ligero wrapper leaf. That was surprising because you don't hear that very often because it's a tougher leaf to get a lot of wrapper leaf to make it look pretty and all that stuff. Ligero is typically used, from my understanding, in the filler.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that, they can, we've talked about when we were talking about blending the BS Gold and silver, that's where you get, I think, a lot of the strength profile from a cigar is that filler. Because you can use some Seco for the flavor, you know what I mean? And the Ligero is gonna, and they use Ligero now as a marketing term a lot of times. Like a LFD is a double Ligero is a big seller for us. The DL 700, DL whatever, the Chisel. The double Ligero is going to be, they claim, I've heard, anywhere between like 16-70% of the filler is Ligero. So you're going to have a very strong cigar, but that's where you can't do, I've smoked a cigar that was basically 100% Ligero, and that's a tough one to do because you don't have as much flavor, it's just all strength.
Right.
It's kind of like, I mean, I'd compare it to something like a barrel proof of something where you just start drinking it neat, and you're just like, dude, I can't really taste anything because it's just burning it, man. You know what I mean? It's just all alcohol at this point. That's kind of where you have a Ligero, like a nicotine drip. So that's, to answer that question initially where we got into the FDA stuff, that's where it's tough now as far as explaining what the strength is. And truth be told, I think in the cigar industry it's different because Nate's saying 82% compared to the Ligero, which is 41. Nate worked for LFD for a while, so he's saying even 80% of that LFD double Ligero is Ligero in there, so that's very strong. But when you're trying to describe it to someone that is actually interested in it, you're not just marketing premium cigars and be like, hey, it's just light, come over here, you know what I mean? Right. We do have flavored stuff, which is under scrutiny as well. But when you have that, when you're trying to describe to someone, it's like, well, I don't want anything, they say, I don't want anything too strong. So now it's like a retailer or someone trying to explain, or even someone in the marketing side of things, like you want to be able to explain it. Like this is an actual thing.
Yeah.
It's not a diet cigar. It's literally like there is less nicotine in this cigar over here versus this, like a Macanudo. The high part or the Cafe series is a milder cigar. So how do you what word do you want us to use to say there's less nicotine? It's got like a 2 out of 10, and this one's got an 8 out of 10. Like, no matter how, like you said, semantics, I think at that point it is very much semantics. That is a fact. Much like you look at the bourbons. This is what, 45.6% alcohol, so they use proof. So it's 91.2 proof. Now you're looking at a bottle on that, it's like that's just factual, but you're gonna say, not milder, but like a 60-some%, 120 proof is gonna be a stronger liquor. So you either add water to it, cut it down, put an ice cube in it, drink less of it, but that's just how this works.
I think it's just so interesting about how, diving into these topics, how much we dive down the rabbit hole and how many issues are surrounding like the tobacco industry, like especially like nowadays.
A lot. I mean, there's always been that scrutiny on that. I mean, I've used that term already, but I think that's something that this is an industry much like alcohol went through, tobacco has gone through the cigarette side. But it's odd when, like the Tobacco Act of 2009. I don't want to say it was legitimate based on what you were saying as Americans, but at the same time, if you have something that originally started back in the, say, when it got really popular, 50s, 60s, 70s, like cigarette smoking was just booming at that point. You see all those ads were getting out there, all this stuff, smoke our brand, all that stuff, like even doctors smoke it type thing. You know what I mean? You got a lady, that's pregnant in the doctor's office, the doctor's got a cigarette and a clipboard type thing. That was 100% tobacco and paper around it typically. Now you have to look at the farming side of that, obviously, with like what they're using as pesticides, things like that might harm you if you're inhaling it. But when it comes down to now, those truth ads that were really big for a while, I think there was a lot of fact to that, where it was like it's not all tobacco anymore. There's a lot of additives. These cigarette companies have added stuff to make it more addictive, to make it cheaper, like all that stuff, you know what I mean? Like it's more synthetic stuff.
The problem is that it's all lumped together.
Right.
There's no line where it's drawn that there's a differentiation between cigars, cigarettes, this vape stuff now. I don't even know if that's considered.
It's in the Tobacco Act, and that's what's so odd is that it's 0%.
Well, it's kind of interesting going back to bourbon, because I'm not a huge cigar guy, but the same thing you're saying is you look right now, you can watch how many commercials about beer. When do you see TV commercials about bourbon? You don't.
Oh, Mila Kunis has that.
They're starting to come around.
The top ones are starting to get more popular, but it's the big companies. It's the Jim Beam. You don't see.
They're sponsoring baseball teams.
Right, but there's not a lot of that,
which is cool.
So there are regulations put on both of them, but I think unfortunately, tobacco's got the stigma that's attached to one of the biggest problem with cancer. I mean, I think people
absolutely.
that's been tied into it, and people, I lost my mother to cancer, so everyone's always trying to find out a reason why and to stop people from going through that. And the tobacco industry is, one of the top people that are getting hit with that because, there is proof that it does contribute to that. It's not
absolutely.
There's people that never touch cigarettes, never on set, can't smoke, and they end up getting cancer as well. So.
And there's no way that I'm condoning like cigarette smoking because cigar smoking is different. Like I'm just gonna say that. So, so I'm just saying like there's problems in like where's the fine line drawn?
But that's your passion. Like I mean the same thing is like when you talk about alcohol. Like so someone sits I consider the same thing about drinking beer and drinking bourbon. Like friends are like I never touch bourbon, but you talk to them and they drink 9 beers a night.
Right.
Depending on the night, I may have a couple pours of bourbon. So, I could say the same argument about, bourbon's not the same as beer, and you could say that cigars aren't the same thing as cigarettes, but the people on the outside, they don't see that. They just lump it in together.
It's all tobacco.
Alcohol, tobacco's tobacco. And
One thing I did just notice is the fact that, I don't know if you've heard this, Chay, but Steve and I have talked about, I told Steve, is that there was something about, I don't think maybe it was the FDA where we've talked about a lot about source whiskey, and there's been times where it said distilled by whatever distilling, and then we know it's source whiskey, and then they say it's distilled wherever the distillery's at, right? This is the first time that it says distilled by Bulleit Distilling Company, but my only issue is that it says it's in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. Ain't that funny? But the Bulleit Distillery is not in Lawrenceburg. So, MGP is though.
Yeah, but
isn't that interesting?
Well, I think I don't know. I mean, I'm new to the MGP game, but I think MGP is also trying to make their name as well. So any chance they get to do something like that, the people on the inside can read through the label and look at it.
I'm glad they are doing it though now because it's like you try a bottle that you really like, and all the marketing is the story behind it, right? I love Boone County now. You love it now, Chay, and it's like that's a source whiskey, and it's like it's not made in Boone County. It's made at Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, but the bottle won't say that. So how are they able to do that?
But eventually they're going to transition to where it is.
Right.
Boone County will be one of those places where eventually it will be, and from what I understand, there's people that know this a lot more than all of us here. But these labels, you talk about being regulated, putting whatever these labels they put on these bottles are hugely regulated by the government. All these things are approved. So, it's kind of funny you talk about. I think everybody knows one of the most taxed and regulated things in America is bourbon, and always has been. So it's interesting to hear you talk about cigars.
Cigars are much the same way tobacco is. Yeah. I mean, you look at like as far from a retailer standpoint. I mean, it's state by state. I mean, like I think cigars are one thing, and that we have it state by state. But like cigarettes, and not to keep going down that, but just to kind of conclude that the topic of this is, we get people coming into our cigar shops. We're like 3 doors down from a Hilton at Easton. Well, they'll come in and be like, how much cigarettes? And you can tell where they're from because of the reaction. If they're local, it might be, oh man, you guys are a little more expensive. And they're like, oh man, well, how much more are you? Well, I was at a gas station, they were a quarter less. It's like, all right, chill out. Well, then if you're from like Kentucky and you're buying cigarettes, well, instead of $7 a pack, they're like $5. So I mean, if you smoke daily, like that adds up, right? Now, if they say, oh my God, like that's cheap as heck, and we're like, well, how much are you spending? And they're like, oh, it's like $13, $14 a pack. Are you from New York? Yeah.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, like that's where it's like, talk about, taxes and everything else. That's a big part of it.
Well, before we dive into our topic, we're talking about, like, this is kind of political correctness, but what do you guys think of the pairing?
That's I have to be politically correct?
No, I was kind of pointing at the computer to stop it there, and then we'll...
You want me to stop it now?
Yeah,
all right.
Because you're pointing at it.
I didn't know.
Was I just supposed to say it?
I didn't know.
So we're not recording now?
We're not recording now, we're recording now.
So how much is this, you were talking about prices, how much, I was trying to say, how much is it, what's this price point compared to?
About $8.
So it's...
For that size, I mean, it's like
a $4 cigar, what do you think?
And I honestly, like, the guys, I used to smoke a lot, I just don't anymore. I think I told you before, I've said to Phil numerous times, I used to smoke a lot, but then like something just happened where the full bodies are like the full, or without, you know, I don't say full anymore.
Yeah.
You can.
No, but you know what I mean. And what's surprising is when you guys said this was full body, I was going to be a little worried because I haven't had a cigar in a while. But it's really smooth for something that's
great.
you know
Sure.
this strong. You know, I'm surprised.
Man,
My father-in-law will be happy because now maybe we'll smoke a cigar because every time he comes he smokes a cigar on the deck and never
Nice.
does that. So.
That's some standing smoke. I just walked through a cloud on the video here. Phil Davis says, hey, you guys have Venmo. I do. I know Jake's got PayPal.
It's a joke.
Cool.
It's an
What's your
send me-
Venmo, Phil? What's your Venmo?
Send me anything you want.
Phil and Chay got in a fight when we were at Hotel Tango.
Nice.
We got into an altercation.
It's
Yeah.
funny.
Disagreement.
It was really fun.
Cheese.
But we had a disagreement.
I would, wait, 1, 2, 3.
Go.
I would say as far as the pairing goes, we just started recording again.
Oh my God.
It's on
You could have
Facebook.
went all the way through
Now I'm gonna
that.
do it. Now I'm gonna do it.
Okay, cool.
Alright. As far as the pairing goes,
Take 3.
I would I would say it goes really well together. I mean, I think the cigar definitely holds its own because this is so smooth as far as the Bulleit 10.
I think it takes over the Bulleit 10. I think the Bulleit 10 is super smooth. It's got just it's bourbon, so it's always going to have a bite to it. But as it's smooth, sweet, it's got that weird berry in it.
The unknown berry.
After you take a sip, I definitely say that this Inspirato Red kind of overpowers that initial taste from the Bulleit. But I don't know. What do you think, Chay?
No, I think it kind of ties in pretty well. I mean, it's a smooth bourbon, so you don't. I feel like the burn stays in your mouth and your tongue, and the same thing with this cigar. Like we were talking before recording, you know, it's a full body or strong, whatever we're supposed to say now.
Yeah.
The politically correct term for it.
Right.
But yeah, I think they pair pretty well. I mean, kind of. I think I can definitely taste both of them. I mean, when you get in there, it's like I said before. Once you take a sip of that, it kind of sweetens out the cigar a little bit.
I think it's dangerous, this type of pairing, and here's why. Is because the cigar holds its own so well, I start drinking the bourbon, and it is smooth, I get more sweetness. Now we're like, I'm still on my first glass,
Yeah.
but at the same time, towards the bottom of that glass, halfway through the cigar, and I can see, like, with this type of an atmosphere, like we do like in the garage, Whiskey Wednesdays, this is going to be one that I can just
Get out of hand with.
next thing you know, yeah, the bottle's gone. I just smoked the other half of this. I'm like, now I know why I feel drunk because it does go down so easy.
Well, I definitely say that I would venture off and say that for the people that don't normally drink and smoke cigars and they're wanting to try out whiskey and try out this kind of lifestyle because it's kind of like what we're promoting, really. But
Yeah, promoting, not condoning.
Right?
Right, is that what we're doing here?
Oh, look, I'm getting politically correct there.
I don't know. I'm not.
That was politically
I'm not politically
You're
correct at all.
I mean, we are
But
kind of.
I'm just going to say that, like, if you're looking to get into this type of stuff, you see us doing it all the time. This is something that you could definitely do, and it's easy, and you have, quality things. And just this is under $50, and you could have a hell of a night with a group of friends. You could all chip in $10 and get a nice bottle. So, and then an $8 cigar, a $9 cigar.
Yeah, so I mean, at least in Ohio, at the tinderbox, we sell the Macanudo Inspirato Red. I think it starts around $7. So this size, if we have this one in stock at the time, it's about 7-ish, and then it tops out about 9, and that's for a Gigante.
Okay.
So I don't know if we have any of this is the only box press size that they do, which is interesting. So
yeah, I've never seen a box press.
yeah, so we carry the Robusto and the red. And the Inspirato line has expanded. It was originally just the Inspirato, which was an orange label. Then they came out with the red. Now they have a white and a black. The white's going to be a milder, I can say it, I don't care, a milder selection. The orange is more medium. This is like medium fuller body, and the black is medium full as well.
I think the big size, don't we have a 660 in it?
It was 660.
I smoked that one, and I think it gets super bitter. This one's better.
This one's great. Toro's good.
This is a 5 by what? 52.
52, yeah, box press.
Well, if we have it, so don't.
And if we have the red.
We have the red. We'll decide on the size or whatever. But if you come in the any of the sizes, if you come in the tinderbox Easton, you'll get 15% off your purchase of the Inspirato Red.
If you mention the Bourbon and BS podcast.
Right.
Let me ask a dumb question. So, not being in the cigar game for a while, what is this? How does this price point go? $8 compared to when we were talking about like a $27 bourbon. You may have went over this in your podcast.
I would.
Like, how does this? Is this like old granddad? You know?
No, not that low.
Level? Are we up at the Eagle Rare type level? At
This is like regular Bulleit. This is like any like Jameson Irish. You know, it's even Buffalo Trace, which we were sipping on.
Well,
yeah, that $20 to $30 price range, I would say, is this range. So it's like an everyday smoke if you know
like
can.
it.
Yeah, I mean, like there is. When you say like what's like Old Crow or something like that, you know, those like $10 bottles to $15 bottles, that's gonna be more than that like $5 and less. So you're getting down to the bundled cigar, which you can find some winners. Like we have the HH, which is a house handmade, which is JC Newman product. Sell those all day long. Those are like everyday smokes for guys that are guys and girls that are smoking $8 to $20 cigars, anywhere in that range. But when they are smoking, like on a weekend, or they're going on a trip, or if they're golfing, they might buy a good bundle cigar like that $4 or $5 price range.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's how I would equate that for sure.
It's funny that you mentioned Old Crow, Steve, because we went to this really. It was in the
obscure.
Yeah, we'll say that. Being politically correct. Yeah, we were in the ghetto of Indianapolis,
right?
And we went to went to the liquor store, and we were sitting in there, you know, for a few minutes. And was it you, Chay, that you saw it? Was a bottle? What was it from?
Old Crow.
Was it from? Yeah, but what?
I think it was 2012.
Yeah, it was
age stated.
Age stated, so it was a 6-year, right?
I want to say 8. Maybe I'm wrong.
6 or 8 year.
It was a barrel.
No, it was a bottle,
yeah.
but it was a 6-year or 8-year Old Crow that the bottle was discontinued.
Okay.
And what was it, like 11 out the door with tax?
Yeah, with tax, $11.
So we kind of dubbed that, like when we went to Hotel Tango and did that barrel pick, that was kind of, even though it wasn't, you know, a high price bottle, it was really cool to find something that was discontinued, very cheap, used to be very cheap too, you know, and it was something that was really cool. So I was just saying it was funny that you mentioned Old Crow, because Chay loved the fact that we found that.
Well, it's like finding something that, you know, we're crazy, the bird people are crazy when you go hunting, because the people are hunting for it. So when you see something you've never seen, it's amazing how we kind of all got excited about it. And then,
it's like a relic, right? I mean,
honestly. You just think how many people went in there and looked at and bought how many other bottles of bourbon and just overlooked it. And,
for sure.
It was kind of, we actually found, I think it was a Jim Beam too, which you said was your first ever bourbon that you ever had.
I found,
as well. So.
Yeah, you guys found, I don't know if you remember, Steve, the old Jim Beam bottles before they were kind of that square looking thing.
Yeah.
They were kind of almost like a box press cigar, like almost like a square tube.
Oh, okay.
You know, it doesn't make sense. But anyways, it was a Jim Beam Black 8-year double aged, which they took away the age statement, and that was discontinued. And I believe those were from 2013, but that was the first whiskey that I had ever tried with my dad. And that was kind of like, even though it was like, what, a $21, $22 bottle, it was still really cool, because they don't, and that one gold medals for years and still does.
Yeah, they still make it, just not age stated. But it's also cool about the experience, and you talked about, you know, promoting a lifestyle. I think that's kind of what the bourbon thing is too. Is it's not just, you know, drinking bourbon in your basement by yourself. It's, you know, enjoying it with your friends and family and things like that. And it was really cool. You know, I'm not a big Jim Beam guy, but to hear the story behind, that was Jake's first bourbon. You know, being a friend, you're like,
there's a story.
It's more exciting about grabbing it. You know,
absolutely, for sure.
We may bust it open and you'd be really disappointed in where you came from, but
it'll
be worth it though.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably in my mind, I'm still gonna love it. But yeah. So I mean, moving on. If this is the first time that you're listening, we've done the whiskey, we've done the cigar, we talked about the pairing. Now it's time that we're moving on to our topic of the evening, which we've kind of alluded to it throughout the night about political correctness versus politeness, really, or being polite.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a similar goal with both of those things. And before we do that, just real quick, this is a good point. Share, like, follow. That's how this grows. Like I said, last week we had 1,000. Like, that's all we're doing this for fun. We'd also like help so we can continue doing it and not take money out of our pocket for all this stuff. The cigars are sponsored as of now. We've got some extra sponsor dollars so we can upgrade some of the equipment and everything like that. But as this continues to grow and as we get towards, week 52, which is what the goal is, out in front of us, is we'd like to have a little bit more support from all you guys. So just, if you're listening at any point on the podcast, if you're listening on Facebook Live, anytime you do this, if you're listening at this moment, all I'm asking is share the Instagram, share this video if you're watching it out there, share it to anyone else, to your page, to any groups that you're involved in that you think that they would enjoy it. Thank you to Tinderbox at Easton for the cigars, for the support. That's where we're based out of, essentially. Altadis, who's our big, first big-time sponsor outside of that. And then BS Cigar Company, which I've got a half-lit one in here from before, because we just got the fresh delivery of those. So that's all I want to say with that. Yeah. But as far as the politically correct versus being polite, that's the topic tonight. And like I said, generally, before we dive into it, I think just if we can go kind of around the table and say, like, what do you consider like a general definition of each? Because that's where I say, like, if you're just describing it essentially, it's kind of at the core. Now I think there's different motives, but I think at the core, it's like being politically correct is that you're trying to do things where you're not offending anyone. You're being unoffensive to all parties to the extreme. Where being polite is you like what I consider manners. So based on your upbringing, being polite, the intention there is that you don't mean any ill will to that person. Or if you do have something, it's like they always say, it's like if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Right. That's where you're being polite, is that you're trying to be courteous as opposed to send a message and not offend anyone at all, no matter what you say. Yeah. Chay.
Well, it was interesting when you told us the topic was, we talked about, political correctness and politeness. I think a lot of people put together, but I don't know. I think being polite is really just like in general how you should treat everybody else. And I think politically correctness is kind of the opposite. What do you think? I think it's zoning in on certain smaller groups, and I think that's why people get a little defensive. Like, oh, I can't. You and I being bald guys, right? You could. How many times do you have people comment about us having no hair?
Well, I think we both get a lot of handsome compliments.
That's true. I mean, other than that,
are you
maybe it's jealous. But no,
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, it's a style now.
Yeah, like, no, but it is.
People have great hair and then they shave their heads.
But Steve and I have embraced it. We may not. We could probably have hair like yours if we wanted to. We could
definitely not.
A lot of real game.
No, but people make that comment towards you about. You can make a comment about your hair, but you can't make. Some people feel like you can't make a comment about another part of someone's looks, like someone's weight. Their education,
what's considered a sensitive subject.
Right, but I think political correctness dives into certain groups. I think politeness should apply to everyone. Everybody wants to treat everyone, should treat everyone the same.
Should.
And I think politically correctness, how I look at political correctness is it tells you, oh, you should do that, but you should also sometime maybe give a certain person, someone who's overweight, you should be even more cognizant of them and their feelings, which can rub people the wrong way.
Okay, I like that.
You know what I'm saying?
I get it.
It really, political correctness gets some people because you're saying this person, you have to give them a little bit more sometimes, you know what I mean? Sure, I work all the time, I hear comments about not having hair.
Really?
And a big thing of as a veteran.
Are they joking with the hair thing?
But joking or not.
Do they say like, oh, no offense?
But if I were to go to my HR and say, oh my gosh, there's people at work that are making fun of me that I'm bald. Let's be realistic. They're going to look at me and go,
There's probably people that do complain about that.
Are you serious?
But
if someone were to pick a different topic and say, they're making fun of my weight.
Your sexual orientation.
There would be repercussions, I think. And another one that I get more about political correctness lately is being a veteran, and I think I text you guys one of the topics too is PTSD. Like I hear all the time that as veterans you gotta watch out for as veterans because we're crazy. The PTSD stigma. So, you should really treat everybody the same. I kind of look at it as like I try to teach my kids is politeness. It can happen every day. That's a choice you make. Yeah. But I feel like political correctness it takes the next step, and I don't know if they're trying to protect a certain person, but it does make people who aren't in that group get a little upset because they can look at themselves and say, I can say like I just said, nobody's protecting me because I lost my hair earlier than Jake. Yeah. Although you have a few.
You're older, you're older. So.
But no, it's true. That's what
Okay.
it comes to. So I think it's definitely different.
Okay, Jake, what do you think before we dive into it? Your take on it?
Here's what I'll say is the fact that, you know, I just looked up like politically correct because I had something thought out at the beginning, but I figured I'd do this first. So it's, you know, looking at the synonyms, it's like unoffensive, non-discriminatory, unbiased, neutral, appropriate, nonpartisan. So, you know, it looks, but the first one is unoffensive.
Yeah, and that's what I had said.
So it's like when I hear that or read it anymore, you know, a lot of people complain about either someone being mean to them and you know, a lot of, like the older generation says my generation is very sensitive and stuff like that. And I think when I look at this, and I agree, by the way, is
Agree
that
with what?
I agree with the fact that like my generation is very sensitive, and I'm sensitive too, but like
You know Ray's watching.
yeah, I know, that's why I'm saying this.
You don't want to say the hot term?
What?
What generation?
Oh, millennials?
There it is. All right, go
Yeah, I can start talking about guns if Ray would like that.
Calm down.
But being unoffensive, I think is very a loose term because you can offend anyone with whatever you say. So it's like, what do you, how can you even say anything without being offensive? I guess, I mean, because that's more of a subjective thing. Like you could say something that pisses me off that's about, like you could talk about, like, I don't know, like you have hairy legs or something. I'm like, well, I'm really self-conscious about that or something like that. Or you could, I mean, that's just taking it to like the low level of that. What I'll say about political correctness, I think at face value, that's exactly what it is because, and what I mean by that is the fact that it can be used as a political stance.
Okay.
I think that whatever someone says, if it's a topic, whether it's like sexual orientation, whether it's being, you know, discriminatory or whether it's about race or something like that, it's something that can be used as a political stance to, you know, either gain like votes or create some sort of, yeah, and I will I mean, that's what I think it is. So being polite versus being I was good in there.
I'm sorry to rush you.
Well, I think being polite is what you guys said about the manners thing. It's like, you know, treat everybody the way you want to be treated. And I know that's hard to define, whether it be laws or, you know, legislation and stuff like that. But I think we all know, like, what being polite is and not being completely an ass. I mean, but I think it comes down to the point where being politically correct, it's like you can offend anybody. Anything that you say nowadays could offend somebody. And it's kind of tiring if you're always trying to be politically correct. There is a difference between being polite and politically correct.
I'll say, you know, you brought him up and he did say he was offended by that remark, Jake.
Well, I figured.
No. Ray actually said before you got into that, and I like this because I think this is a valid point, and this is Ray Chester. He's saying, being polite is a consistent standard which should be easy for everyone to adhere to. Political correctness is an ever-changing position which is impossible to keep up with, often used to an individual or group's advantage.
Yeah.
So I think he actually, before you went into that, that's what he had sent. So believe it or not, you guys have a similar mindset on that.
No, I don't.
That's just being stubborn at this point.
Yeah, but I think we're being driven. You know, we've all said that. It's funny. I said the same things. It seems political correctness targets a certain group, but I think in a society we're being pushed that way. But politeness is why we're focusing on that and focusing on the small groups. The politeness thing has gone out the window. I'm not even going to blame like a certain group of people like millennials or anybody. It's anywhere. Like go every day and watch how impolite people are. Go to like. When you're driving, go to the store and watch people that will just come into the store. You'll be in line. They'll see 5 or 6 people and like just cut in line because they're.
Yeah.
And that's society. Society.
Yeah, that's not millennial. That's not anything. I mean,
No, that's
just people.
we've gotten to become a very unpolite society in my eyes. But at the same time, we're becoming very politically correct. We protect. You know, and not to say that these groups should be protected, and you shouldn't say, hey, this is unacceptable to call someone, you know, something based on their race or their you know, their sexual orientation, but what about the, you know, turning the tide and say, okay, it's not okay to cut in front of people in line. It's not okay to, you know, the impolite things we see every day. I mean, if you see it, how people treat, like, impolite thing is, like, I don't know how many times you guys have seen it, but, you know, I work, you know, factory environment. Everybody I walk by in the morning, I say hello to.
Yeah.
Good morning, how are you? And I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating, 70% of the people look at you like, what are you...
You're crazy.
Yeah, what are you saying good morning to me? I don't even know you. But the polite thing to do is to say good morning. I mean, how hard is that to say good morning? Like,
Well, I think that's also, though, like, that's something that Midwest is actually really well known for. I know that, like, we are that type of people. You walk down the street, you're going to say, hey, how you doing? You're not expecting to walk, like, literally, if you say, hey, how you doing? If you said that to every person on your walk to the store, say you live in town or whatever, you would never get to the store if you actually want to know how they're doing. And they're going to get into a conversation. So, I mean, that's like a extended hello type thing. You know, it's kind of like the polite side of it. It's like,
yeah, but the polite back is to say hello. I mean, you're realistic. Nobody wants to, you know, you never get to work, but
they're
you do. But polite is to say, not to cut you off, but polite is to say good morning to you. It's a simple thing. I mean, it's that's gone away.
Right. I mean, what I guess my point was is that here in the Midwest, there are people listening all over. So, you know, in the Midwest, that is typically something that you will see. You're walking down the street. Like when I went to Miami and Oxford, Ohio for college, students that were from elsewhere, I'm saying not overseas, but like literally from the East Coast or from the West Coast or down south or you know, wherever, bigger cities, you say, you know, they do make comments like, no one does that where I'm from. I walk down the street, you don't even look at people. You don't even, like, that's just not part of the culture there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, like, different areas do that differently because of the upbringing, you know, and the culture-specific mannerisms or the social norms or whatever it is. I look at being polite as something, like, to that point, it's like the whole golden rule, you know, treat others like you want to be treated. Problem is now we're in the world where it's like you don't even want to be treated well yourself, so fuck off everyone else. You know, that's the problem there. So, I mean, I look at those things when you're being polite, like if you brought up like being overweight or, you know, whatever, like being bald and all that stuff, like why is that even a topic of conversation? I mean, if I'm going to say like, so wait, like you got mistaken for me, Chay, you know what I mean? Or like, you know, like what does he look like? Well, he's taller, he's got a beard, he's bald and all that stuff. I'm not like, that's description.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's a description. Now, if you're commenting, like, you know, like insulting somehow with, you know, being bald, it's like I've had that, like, even like around the shop, people are joking about it, like about being bald. And I'm like, you grew your own hair, like, cool, like, congrats. Like, you wake up this morning and decide, you know what, I'm gonna grow all my hair. Like, fuck off. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, that's not being polite or politically incorrect. You're an idiot. Like, you're fucking dumb at that point because it's like I didn't choose to go bald. Like, it's not like I just was like, you know what? This part right here, just tired of it. I'm just gonna like, it's exhausting to grow the top of my hair.
Yeah, save a lot of money, but
you know,
growing hair.
But we do more grooming than anyone else. You know what I mean? That's what they don't
Yeah,
get.
you probably do more.
Like, oh, it must be easy. I was like, how often do you do your hair? Because like I shave it every other day. Like, how often do you get a haircut? Well, I mean, every like 2-3 weeks. Like, yeah, fuck off.
And somebody else cuts it for you.
Yeah, I haven't had a haircut in almost a year. So.
And you chose to grow all of it, which is great.
Yeah,
it's interesting what you said about, you know, when you said being in the Midwest. So I was in the Army for 11 years, so I've lived all over the place. I lived in Texas, I've lived in, you know, all of the United States, and it's interesting to say that it's like, it's kind of like people say it's expected. So it's the same, you could say the same thing about political correctness. If you grew up in the South, you could make that statement towards the people, oh, this is how I am. But I think that's a cop-out on both ends. I mean, if you grew up in New York, you know, I spent the majority of my life in New York, and New York is, people will tell you some
city or state or
upstate.
Where? Upstate, okay.
You can still say it's one of the most unfriendly places, but I grew up there. I still say hello to everybody.
That's good.
So it's, you know,
where are your parents from there?
Yeah, but you know, your parents teach you that.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with, you know, I wouldn't give anybody that out to say, well, I'm from New York or I'm from Miami. We don't say hello to anybody. That's not how I learned. You know, if you want to, if someone were to trigger them about a political, you know, go after someone politically correct, nobody would ever take the arguments, well, I grew up in the South, so I'm allowed to say certain derogatory comments towards other people. People would go like, you're crazy. You know?
Yeah, you're not allowed.
You can't do that, but it's a touchy subject. I mean, I think
everything to deal with political correctness is touchy. That's what I mean. Like it has to be a political stance, and it's used to do so.
Well, I think, like I said before in the beginning, I still think political correctness dives into it breaks up as much as we want to be together as a society. It really focuses on certain parts of society, and it does protect certain parts of society that needs
job. It does do its
But the other part of it is I think there needs to be a shift, like I said, to get on people and being polite. Like my kids, I tell my boys, it's one of the big things is if they know you and I see them and they don't say hello to you, I'm gonna get on their ass and say, hey, Steve, Jake, you walk up, you say hello, right? Yeah. And I've heard our parents go like, why would you do that? That's crazy. No, that's being polite. That's being how you're supposed to be. That's how you're supposed to treat other people.
Right, but I guess my point is like being politically correct, being polite is again, you go back to the upbringing thing. So I'm using bald because you brought it up, right? And I think this is actually a good kind of metaphor for other things. You talk about race, sex, sexual orientation, if you will, or whatever it is. Like, yeah, male, female. Not getting the whole gender conversation. I don't want to get into that unless we really want to. But it's like a man or a woman based on appearance, whatever you call it. Like, if you see a bald person, son, like, they're not to be trusted. Like, they're lesser than us, whatever it is. So being polite is just don't say anything.
But do you think that dives into political correctness? If it's something that like goes back to, like racism or...
I go with you. I think the political correct movement, which is a little bit more and more used every day now. I mean, it's been around. Like I looked it up, like you did. It said first time it was used in some sort of literature. I guess it was like in the 1930s. That term, political correct, whatever, incorrect, correct. But it's always there is a purpose to it. It's not necessarily just manners. It's not being polite. It's not like that. You can't run a government. You can't set things up based on being nice. Like that's clear, right? So that's where I think some of the political correctness, like there is, to your point, Chay, like there is you're separating it, but and I don't know about the whole chicken and the egg there. Like is it being worse because we're doing more of it, or is it actually an issue and it's just a matter you have to address it? But like when you're talking about race, you're talking about sexual orientation, you're talking about anything really, like classes as far as like income levels and all that stuff. I mean, being politically correct, like you can't necessarily govern, especially as many people as we have in our country, in different countries, all that stuff based on polite manners. So I think there is actual purpose to that.
Agreed.
In an everyday thing. So in the work environment, you can't write a policy handbook on being nice. That doesn't fucking work. Yeah. Because it's too subjective.
But
it's actually more objective, in my opinion, being politically correct or being PC, because you do have to. There's so many things, like a greater thing at stake, which is that company, that body or the government, the country, that you can't just be like, well, you weren't nice, so like stop it. Like no, you have to actually abide by some agreed upon level of being correct in that, and that's where it comes from politically. You know what I mean? That's where I see a body like a work environment, like the warehouse environment you're talking about. You're talking about being polite by saying hi and all that stuff and having a conversation. And Susie looks like she's having a rough day, so you go up and say, but then being polite. This is what I'll say. In the work environment, you see Susie's having a rough day. She's crying at lunch break, whatever it is, and you go up and you say, hey Susie, what's going on? Like, do you want to talk about it? Well, not really. But okay, here it is. Well, being politically correct and all that, you can't walk up to us if you're a supervisor or a coworker. You can't say, hey Susie, what's going on? Because now she's like, she can go to HR and be like, well, Chay came up to me and was asking about it, and then he was really probing, and I just feel like this is going to come back on my review, and now I'm going to be judged because I'm a woman, because I'm having problems at home, because I'm a divorcee, because I'm a single mother, because I'm a single father. I'm not going to do the sex thing, but it's like all that stuff. It's like you'll have that. Yeah, even Dustin's cringing in the background because he's a manager.
I just don't agree with that.
I'm saying you don't do it. I'm saying that could always come back based on your policy handbook.
Yeah.
No, I asked you what's going on.
I understand that.
But in some
instances, there could be that person who goes off and runs to HR about it. But I guess part of it is also in the approach. As far as from my position is how I go about approaching it.
All right. So if you can't hear him on the microphone, what's that?
They can.
Okay.
All
right. So my point is that we're not getting into I'm not getting into the specifics of that situation. I'm using that as an example of being polite and having good manners and caring about people, or being polite versus being politically correct to the extreme. You can't even ask that person because as a manager, you can't get into personal problems with that person. Yeah, that's my point. I'm not trying to dive into your position, or anyone's that's listening. I'm saying that's my example of the difference between the two of them.
Yeah,
That's the extreme gray line, I think.
I think so too, and I think they also, you know, as hard or as much as I don't want to say it, I think they do combine with each other too. Where it's like I've seen, you know, just being 2 weeks into my new job, being in the corporate world for the first time, it's like,
Right.
you know, I got, you know, people telling me, well, kind of watch what you say because you're in a different environment. If you say something stupid, then it could reflect on you poorly if you say it to the wrong person or around the wrong person. So it's like, but that's what I mean is I don't think that's being polite. If I go up to somebody and talk about the color of their skin or something like that, nothing derogatory, but if they randomly feel that if we're talking about the color of their skin and they're getting uncomfortable, when I literally said nothing wrong, I was being polite, talking to them, how was your day, and we get on a subject of that, and it's like at the end of it they feel offended. It's like I was polite, but then politically correct, I was wrong. But then there's instances where being polite and politically correct is like saying the F word or cursing in a corporate setting or a political setting, you know. But it's like if I don't know. After we've started this, I get jumbled up with my own thoughts, and it's kind of.
That's right. Yeah, we worked it out.
It's kind of like, how do we differentiate this without really offending people? But yeah.
Go ahead, Jay.
I just think with the political correctness, it's like it's funny you said it because it's exactly what it does. The wheels get turned and it just starts to mesh itself, and you don't know really. You know, there's terms that like if you do say something like you're at your bar and you're like, you know, I fucking hate the Red Sox or I hate anybody from Boston.
Yeah.
You're not being polite. But I don't think you're not being politically correct either. You're just, you know, there's times to say those things and there's times not to. So I think when you express yourself, which we all do, you know, you say things that we probably shouldn't. It's where you say them can be lumped into the politically correctness. Like it's not politically correct at work to be complaining about, you know, politics or religion or things like that.
Well, it's like sports teams. Like I've been thinking about that. Sports teams, you have Indians, Warriors, stuff like that, names like that, and it's like it's not. They've been under scrutiny for years. There's teams where it's like that's not politically correct because it offends Native Americans or actual, you know, Indians from India or whatever, but or Redskins, you know, or whatever.
Miami was Redskins, and then by the time I got there, it was Red Hawks.
Yeah, but it's like it's not polite nor impolite. I don't think it's just.
Well, it depends on the root of it. And I think that's where a lot of it. Like it's a lot of times it's the education as far as like what is your education level of what is being said. So like that type of thing. It's like, you know, Miami is also named after that region, which was all based on the same thing as the Redskins. Now, Redskins was not necessarily a good term, but it was also, you know, it's like you have to, and I don't know all the history behind it, but before you make a judgment, like don't be ignorant about it. Just be like, oh, that offends someone. It's like, all right, calm down. Why?
Yeah.
Well, because it hurts their feelings, or it's against, you know, this certain group of people, their heritage, and you're like, why? Like, it's like, how deep do you actually know this? And if you know it all, and it actually comes back, like, no, they named it that because the history of it is it happened this year, and then this organization named it Redskins because they use it as a frightening thing because the Indians, which are the Native Americans, were all basically they were using it because they used to paint their faces and do all this stuff, and it's like, whoa. Yeah. Okay, now I see where you're coming from. They literally were being derogatory when they named that team. That's something where you're like, that's not even being politically correct. You're like, that's outdated. Like, let's fucking change it because we don't do that anymore. That's where I look at it.
Well, I'll give you an example. Another example is when I was in high school, one of my good buddies, we had like a Halloween day, you know, for Halloween, and we all dressed up, obviously, but he dressed up like Lil Wayne. He's a rapper, and he's African American, right? So he actually painted his whole body brown, which when we were in high school, like I had never heard of like blackfacing, but one of the older teachers, you know, brought that up, and he got suspended until he was able to get all the paint off.
Yeah,
and
it's like ignorance is not most there.
And it's like I was like, blackface. I had to look it up. I had never been taught like what that was. You know, that had been so far, you know, before my time that We had no idea.
But that comes down to, again, is I think, like I said earlier, is I think political correctness and protecting, you know, the people that truly are offended. I can see that there's people that, you're younger and you may not know what that is, but you may see that now and
it's an education
they
thing.
see that and it really does offend someone.
Yeah.
So I have no problem with if we're, as a society, we continue to evolve and we do become more sensitive and polite to other people's, play in the world, like how they are, like how they look, and what, because that's what you don't realize is, blackface to you is when we deal as a joke. You're just, that person is portraying, a famous rapper, but to someone else that's, like an 8-year-old a black woman or black man, that is offensive. And I think as a society, we should be like, okay, that's not right. We should.
There's a history thing there, I did want to say real quick because I like that when I was on the work topic, there was a comment from Ray.
Ray's all over you today. Huh?
Well, that's the thing. I
Like comments all the time.
Well, no, I think this is interesting because Ray he's been in the business world for quite some time, all over the world, right? So he's from the UK, lived in Mexico, working here in Columbus area. Now he's in Hong Kong, does business all over the world. He says, how I know that polite and PC are not the same thing. When I worked in Columbus, I sent an email to 2 female colleagues in New York and started it, quote, morning ladies, end quote. Long story short, my boss came from New York to explain to me that one or both of them had complained about how I had addressed them in the email. For me, calling them, quote, ladies was as polite as I could be. So again, just based on saying that, it was like that whole, like the saying now, are you assuming my gender type thing? It's kind of like that was that whole thing. It's like you want to treat people equally, but it's like, you look at that and like Ray's looking at it, it's like, that's not negative, that's not positive, that's literally like, you are ladies.
But that's where it's taking it too far. That's my mind is like,
I agree.
What Ray says is exactly on. I mean, we're like, when I write an email, when I send an email, there's a group of people, there's, different, sex on the email. Used to do like all or ladies and gentlemen. I just do now team because you don't want to do that.
Whom it may concern.
But that's
there's no gender
associated.
associated.
Like that's where you struggle. Is we all struggle. I'm 100% behind Ray. It's like, what are you like? Maybe the person is transgender and you don't know that. I can see how that person may get offended by that. But how? That's the thing is how is that not politically correct to call? Good morning, sir, or good morning, ma'am. Like, how is that, politically correct? That's where the people draw that and go, that's not politically correct to call ladies. The question would be like, what did your manager come back and say you should call it?
Yeah, that's
how
a
do
good
you
question.
address that?
But my whole thing is
that
here's one of my things is that this is where it actually is a disconnect also because that when you're going down that what we call the rabbit hole of the being politically correct. When he sent it to 2 people, and then they went to his supervisor, so you got Ray here, and say they were either below him in the hierarchy or on the same level or even above them, whatever it is, right? And he says ladies because they're females, whatever. And so then they, instead of going like whoever was offended, they both were, or one of them was, and they don't just like pull Ray aside and be like, hey, just so you know, like, by the way, like the whole lady thing, like I'm trying to do this, like if you would refrain from doing that, I'd really appreciate it. And Ray would be like, I'm sorry, I meant no like insult or injury, like that's just how, like that's how I thought I'd do it. And then it's squashed. But what happens because you're being in that overdrive of being politically correct and you have to follow that hierarchy. That's what I was trying to get at earlier when Dustin was like, no, I do that. It's like, no, those are the employees that you would never think. And then it's like they go to Ray's boss and say, hey, here's this email. They might even forward the email like, I'm offended because you referred to me as a lady and not an equal or whatever. Well, we don't even know what was offensive by it. You know what I mean? But it's like they're offended by something you said as simple as that. They go to the supervisor that then has to go to that, and then all of a sudden you wasted an entire day like basically doing that as opposed to me saying, hey, Chay, you said earlier we worked together. Like I don't appreciate you commenting on my bald head.
Right.
Like just and you can even like say you are self-conscious. You're not self-conscious about it. Like fuck it,
but you're hitting it nail on the head. But what happens? And no one wants to say this, but what happens if that email was sent to 2 men and they said gentlemen?
Right.
And I really feel like we're not. I don't think I'm going down a road that I shouldn't say this, but I think you'd get laughed out of some HR places if you said that. If you
Probably.
said that, they would go like, are you serious?
But nowadays, 2018, you would have, like, as an HR manager, you'd be like, all right, no, I hear what you're saying, so I'm going to have to go to this person and say, like, hey, they don't want to be.
But I really believe I really believe in some organizations that I don't think that topic would even. I really.
Now it is.
I don't feel like. Do you think it would be the same thing?
I think you have to be.
If a man complained, you think?
I think the company line, depending on what organization you're with, they would have to, because that's the other side of treating everyone equally, right? You know, like the majority. But not saying they wouldn't go home and tell their significant other, their buddies at the bar, be like, dude, take a load of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They might be doing it on the other side. Ray said that he was told to address them as all.
Yeah,
like what you said.
Like I said, yeah.
Hello, all.
Is it fair to say that as we do this and we talk about this, that political correctness, in all fairness, when I do say this, I'm assuming that everyone is polite, right?
You can't, though.
But I am. This is the part of the argument, is the fact that, is it fair to say that this is creating it's taking the humility out of things, it's dehumanizing, you know, us as people, when it's just team or all, or it's not like addressing who you are, if I'm talking to you, ma'am or miss, or...
Yeah.
You know, you went back to the email about the conversation, you go like, you know, when something happens, I'm a big firm believer in the first level where you address an issue is always one-on-one.
One-on-one, yeah.
Yeah, that before, you know, because again, I think you said it earlier, is what offends you or what upsets you may not upset that person. So it may upset that person, may not upset you. So knowing where that person comes from and then being able to adjust from that, and if you continue to do that after that, you know, that's where or to me it becomes an issue.
Yeah, I talked to them about this.
You're just saying, I don't really care that you don't like to be called a lady. You know, if they came to you and talked to you and said, I don't like this, and explained to you why, I think most reasonable people would say that's fine, and I can understand that.
Yeah.
But when you're that person like Ray, how do you take that? What do you do next? There's an animosity that comes into it. You start to feel like I'm wrong and I'm the bad person, when you really don't even know why you offended that.
But that's when politeness and political correctness collide. Because it's like, based on that situation, Ray, I think they were being impolite with not coming to you about it. Because it's like, you're just going over you and you're dehumanizing the situation. You just think you can just go above and get you in trouble or whatever, whatever, however it offends you.
Ray says he was horrified by it, but was told not to make a big deal out of it. So he was just like, hey, just from now on, do this type of that's how I envision that conversation. Like I said, with that, there's a lot of moving parts. I think when it comes to being politically correct, people being offended and all that stuff, there are reasons. I don't want to call them valid or invalid, no matter what we're talking about with that specific incident. You don't know what the story is behind the two people that he was emailing that day. So maybe one of them did have a bad experience with it. They were sexually harassed in their last job, or whatever it is. You can come up with that, or they're just like, they're overly sensitive and nothing ever has happened to them. They just kind of have been ingrained in that. But there might be something there that we don't know about, and Ray doesn't know about, and that's why they don't come to me. Hey, Ray, like, I gotta tell you, Chay, that I had a bad. I don't want to talk about this, but I had a bad experience with this, and that's why it offends me because of this. And Ray would be like, okay. But in the work environment, just like in the political environment, like you can't necessarily do that when the scope is that large. And that's where political correctness, I think, overpowers the politeness, because I'm with you. It's like, there's a lot of it that, when I look at it on one side of it, and again, it's that whole thing when this is an interesting conversation in my opinion, because if you're watching Facebook Live, the three of us really talking on here, and Dustin's in the garage as well, we're all white males, right? Different backgrounds to a point, but when it all comes down to it, middle class, whatever you want to call it, give or take, white males. So anyone watching in, if you're female, you're a minority of any other sort, that's where we don't have that perspective. So there's a dynamic, in a sense, there's several dynamics missing. But to that point, it's like, you want to, if you're whatever your gender is, whatever your race is, whatever your class is, if you have pride in that, a lot of times I think of it differently. It's like, if you don't refer to me as sir or anything like that, and you're a stranger, you're in my office space or whatever, above and below me in the hierarchy, it's kind of like, no, I want to be addressed as that. But see, that's where it's like, I don't understand that side of it, where it's like, I don't know why someone would be offended by being called a lady if you are, in my opinion, a lady. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, maybe I'm offending some people listening, but it's like, if I'm a male, like, I want to be referred to as a male. And that's why I don't, like I said, we don't have that dynamic here of someone that doesn't want to be referred to as that for whatever reason, whether it be because I want to be looked at as an equal, so I don't want to be referred to as that because I don't want that to come into play. I don't want to be referred to that because of a past that you don't know about. You know, there's a lot of things that are there, but I look at it as like, I think we're going to get back to a point that is going to be, there is pride there, not necessarily a dividing pride, but it's like, no, I thank you for referring to us as ladies or sir or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, there's
I
something
think that's
there.
already happening, where that's where political correctness takes a bad turn, where it's like people that have, you know, the older generation, they've done this for years, and that's the way that things were supposed to be done. That's the way conversations were supposed to be withheld. And then it's like it shifts, and it's like how you talk to people, it completely changes. Even from the time, you know, when I was in elementary school and middle school, you know, the word gay has changed drastically. And that's not to be offensive, but that's just the way it was. You know, like, if you've ever watched Louis C.K., he used to say about, there was one skit that he had that was like, he used to call people or things gay just because they were gay. Like, it's not, but obviously that's a very, very sensitive subject.
But those are the groups, but go back to what I said at the beginning, is those are there's no doubt in my mind that as a society, that there are certain groups of people that we have to protect. There's nothing okay with, you know, like, I probably shouldn't say this, my family got upset, but the other day my youngest son was playing a video game and something happened in the video game. He said, "This is gay."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Whoa, stop." Like, pause the game. And he was all upset.
It's
like,
a learning moment.
Now you're going to yell at me. And I said, he's like, "Well, you say all kinds of swear words, you say some wrong things." I was like, "Yeah, but Gabe, what you said is really, that is an offensive term. That is something that, what does that mean that the game is gay? What does that mean?"
Yeah, is it either happy or is it homosexual?
Yeah, there's other words that you can use.
Which.
This game is stupid. But in any context, you can't, you know, we are a group of white males in here, but, and I'm assuming all heterosexual, which it doesn't really matter, but you shouldn't say you're gay or that's gay. We should know that, and there's nothing wrong with when someone does that, for our society to say that's not okay, and for that type of, you know, conversation to be stopped.
Well,
in private life or personal life, but I'm a strong believer in what Ray was saying about in the workplace, calling a man and a woman. It's like political correctness is dove into, like, you're protecting. What are we really protecting these people from? That's what I don't understand. I mean, I don't get that. I mean, that's where it gets to be totally against, you know, email, you know, the email form, because that's where we've gone a long way in communicating. Now, you talk about communicating. You know, half the time, you know, at work, I mean, I don't know, you know, Dustin's in management a little bit too, but, you know, I'm in the business. Well, how often do you talk to people on the phone? I mean, it's very easy right now. I can text you on my phone. I can jabber you. I can email you. It's very rare, and I'm still, in my age, I still pick up the phone. If I want to talk about something, I pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And you talk to the person. You get to know the person.
Yeah, you've called me in more than the last 2 weeks than Alicia has.
Yeah, I mean, that's my thing. But
you use the phone app on your phone.
I use the phone, yeah. So like
the phone app.
The green,
like, that's what people, I always joke. No,
what?
No, you talk about the money. I always joke with Ryan in the shop that, like, because there was a time where he didn't use the phone. He would text. Like, I had to communicate through, like, Instagram Messenger at some point because that's how far off. Like, that's the joke, is that, hey, you know, your iPhone has a phone app that actually you can talk to them. Like, it connects you instantly over audio. Like, there's a generation out there, and it's gotten worse and worse.
It has.
So that people don't fucking do it. Like, there's no landlines unless you need it, and it's like everyone has a phone in their pocket. But look at your cell minutes next time you look at your bill.
Yeah.
Which no one looks at their bill anymore because it's all fucking unlimited. But it's like, look at your actual cell minutes. And I guarantee the majority of people are probably under 100 minutes a month.
Well, it's like
but their texting is like 2,000,
I'll
15,
I'll say we live in,
like whatever it is.
I'll say we live in an interesting time, because I'll get back to the generational gap. where it's like you have, like what I said, you have kind of a status quo of what you're supposed to do, and then it has shifted in the last like 50 years. So it's you're telling someone to change themselves, even if it's not bad, even if it's not a racial slur or a sexual orientation slur or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to me that anyone can get offended by anything you say, and that's kind of, you know, Lori Sanders, my mom said that there's also many people in our society that are looking for a reason to be offended for. So,
but you look for like, why? That's where I keep going back to like.
But the politeness,
there's no why.
The politeness
that's the funny thing. There's no why. That's the point.
But political correctness is valued over politeness, and it's like if you open a door for somebody, they're looking at you crazy, and it's like if someone, you know, we've talked about expectations on this. If someone opens or doesn't open a door for me, and they're like right in front of me, and they just like slam the door in my face, I'm pissed, right? But some people look at that offended me because you're being an asshole.
Yeah, I just don't care. I think there's a level there of like being offended, right? So you have people that are always looking to be offended. There's people that are like just like they don't take it seriously. You know what I mean?
We're not being polite.
Yeah, but even that like doesn't ruin my day.
I'm not saying it ruins my day. I'm just saying
you say you're offended though. Like, I mean, I'm not saying.
Like, I've seen.
What constitutes being offended as ruining a day?
No, maybe it's an extreme. It doesn't offend me if someone do that. It's like that dude's an asshole. Like. I mean, you can go the other side of it and be like, maybe he's thinking about the fact that, you know, he got in a fight with his wife this morning and he's worried about his marriage and his kids and what he's going to do. Or maybe he's going bankrupt. Maybe he's got, you know, the house is being foreclosed on and he's thinking about that. He just got off the phone with his bank and they're going to take his house. So the last thing on his mind is fucking holding the door open for you. So that's what I'm saying, like on both sides of it. And I'm not saying you acted inappropriately. Like you can be offended. Like, dude, like what the fuck?
Well, I don't know if it's offended. I think more... I don't think it's offended. Not were you offended they didn't keep the door? You're just mad. It's impolite. You know.
What's the difference?
Yeah. That's what we're talking about tonight. What really?
I mean, it's interesting, right?
But it's not politically correct not to open the door for someone.
Yeah, but what's valuable?
It's impolite.
But what's valuable?
But I said that earlier. I think valuing more. Like I said, I 100% believe where our society is going. It's more valuable to be politically correct.
You can be stern and not like. Be human to the person next to you, just be completely flat with your conversation and not be polite, and you're still considered like a good person because you didn't say any like.
Well, you're politically correct. Good person, like now you're introducing another topic, like another aspect of it. Being polite, impolite, politically correct, incorrect doesn't mean you're a good or bad person.
All these things you're talking about, though, we're talking.
I think being politically correct does say that.
That you're not
unless you don't agree with what is politically correct.
Well, it's not.
So you're not, like I said, it's like
you say a little bit about what you're saying, a good person. I think if you say those things, if you're to make, racial slur, derogatory,
you're considered a shitty person.
Yeah, you're a bad person.
All right, so let me.
And I don't know if if the person that continues to do it over and over, and trust me, there are people that do that, and they hide behind it and go like, I'm 60 years old. I don't care what you say. I'm gonna call a gay person, whatever I want to call him. Mm-hmm. You're an asshole. Like, I mean, that's just. I'm sorry, but.
Yeah, but the translation of that is your son saying this video game's gay, because like when Jake brought that up, that's what with that topic, it's the whole thing of the reason gay became that. Where I was even like in middle school, high school, and stuff like that, we said that if a thing is negative. Not everybody does. No, there are people that do, but I'm saying the reason why. My point was like why did that become a slang term for bad? And why did kids not even realize that it meant homosexual? And that's why, because it was a negative term during the 80s, and that was that whole movement as far as that goes, because it wasn't politically correct to accept that. And that's where it got dumbed down to, just like terms in the past, that was that whole thing. Like, I look at the movie, and I'll lighten this up a little bit, movie Kingpin.
Yeah.
You guys all seen Kingpin?
Yeah. Great flick.
Man, I got Munson. You know what I mean? Like, it becomes a slang term because it was a bad thing, and it was like a derogatory or a negative thing, like an insult, and then it became like that's where gay came from, and that's where it became something where like your kid's probably like, what do you mean? Like it's just gay. Like no, it's not homosexual. Like why would it be homosexual? I don't even understand the question. You're like,
but then you're diving it down. But then you're diving down to like culture and like what you were taught as a child.
Yeah, well, that's where it all comes from. That's socialization. My other thing is like as far as like people not realizing it, I had this conversation with my grandmother when she was still living. We're sitting at a dining room table in the Chicago area, right? And we're talking about, so my dad had a 1979 Lincoln. My grandmother had a 1979 Lincoln. My uncle had a 1979 Lincoln. And all three of them they had for forever, right? Like into the 80s, 90s, all that stuff. My dad had until we had to tow it out of the driveway. But all three of them had their back bumpers literally fall off at some point. Okay? So we were talking about that car. This is years after all the cars were gone. Talking to my grandma about it. I think we're getting ready to go somewhere, and it's just her and I sitting at the dining room table. And I was like, yeah, man, those cars were great. I loved driving that car when I was in high school and all that stuff. And I said, but isn't that odd that all three of those cars, the bumpers fell off? And she's like, you know why, right? And I said, well, no, I just figured they were old and rusted out. You know, a lot of steel. She's like, no, what happened was that the American companies sent the steel over to overseas. And then what happened was that they sent it back and they actually kind of polluted it just out of spite. And so those damn Japs actually fucking did it. Like she said, fuck it. Like those damn Japs basically sabotaged all of our American cars. And I was like, Grandma, you can't say Japs. But there's a lot of people, like a lot of millennials don't even realize that Japs was at one point used as in a somewhat derogatory word. And like I'm using that as a lighter example of it as opposed to using a hot button term. But that's one of those things that a lot of people were like, well, Grandma, you can't say that. And she's like, why not? And she literally was just like, why not? Like your kid would say about gay.
Yeah, but I think my son still, I mean, he's 13 years old, and with the way TV and social media is, you know, my son is not looking at that term as it's a happy game. It's if you say someone's gay,
it's not,
I don't think he's saying that, you know, he's throwing a term out there that people, for a long time, when you say that someone's gay, that's a bad thing.
It means nothing.
That's my point. I'm not saying like I'm saying ignorance on whether it's a bad or good thing. I'm not saying he doesn't realize that that's just a term he used. He's not equating that to happy or homosexual. My grandmother was referring to the Japanese people, but she was saying it in a negative way, and she didn't like her upbringing, her socialization. It was like that's just what you called it.
Yeah.
But
you know
I think when I look at him, it's like I know him pretty well, and how I read into his mind is in talking to him is when he says it's gay, he was saying there's something wrong with this game, and that's a term that a lot of people still, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent how you think. People still think some people that are gay, there's something wrong with them. And I think that's the term that came in. That's where it's wrong. I mean, that's where you have to like.
So is that?
I get where that's a political thing where you have to. That's not acceptable. That's not. It's.
But what's more ironic, though, in my opinion, is like because I went through the generation like kind of right before Jake, and how old are you, Jay?
45.
You were in the middle of it too.
So I'm in the middle of it. So we had the gay thing, but it's like the upbringing is, and like that's the agreed upon norms, in my opinion, right? So like you'd say gay or something like along those lines, or other derogatory terms depending on where you were raised or what time period you were raised. But saying this game is bullshit. Most parents would fly off the handle and be like, where'd you learn that? Why are you saying that? And like, you can't say bullshit because that's a curse word. And it's like, literally, you are describing a pile of shit that a bull just shit out. And that is not a nice, like, you don't want to be around that. You don't want to like touch it. You don't want to like roll around in it. You want to like be around that. You don't want any part of that. So that's what this game is. I'm equating it to bullshit. But you want to say bull excrement? Like, I mean, it's like that's where it is because it became a slang word, and that's supposed to be, that's where it's like polite versus PC, in my opinion.
Well, even Kylie said that, you know, she was giving an example of.
Japs is shorthand for jalapenos.
She was giving an example. She was talking about, so, like, she gets a lot of the time, so you smoke cigars.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope she doesn't get offended by this, but a lady smoking cigars.
Oh, she does.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like, that's impolite, she says, and politically incorrect.
And I think it's like that's where like that whole thing with like Ray and everything else, like it's the other side of it where as a male, like if a female is smoking a cigar, there is still, because there is a difference, I'm not going to look down or up on it. I'm going to be like, but then I might offend someone if I say, oh man, that's kind of hot that she's smoking a cigar. Like that's actually an attraction to someone.
But I think.
But that might offend it because, like, no, I'm the same as you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then it's like it's okay if a female is attracted to a male that's smoking a cigar because I find that attractive. But that's not really objectifying or any differences. Like there's a little bit of a double standard, but I understand it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, smoking cigars though, like women. I mean, you look at it, and it just never used to be a thing. It used to, look at a lot of older time cigars. It was a guy thing. It was a
Yeah.
So there are. I mean,
Well,
I think you're the same thing.
Tomboy.
You're in the industry. I think you would say that you're never surprised that you're sometimes surprised when you see if a woman came in and knew just as much about cigars as you did. You wouldn't be a little like that's kind of.
Different. It's different.
No, you'd think it's hot, but the people we had in the garage before.
All the females.
I was really. I asked a question before we went on about how she got in the industry, and it was kind of.
That's not the same, but yes.
I look at it, and if you look at it, I was more surprised about. And to be honest with you, if you're being realistic, I was really shocked that there was a woman who was in charge of marketing for a major brand for all the United States. So. Some people could look like, oh my God, you're a horrible Chay because now you're thinking a woman can't do it. That's not what I'm thinking.
Right.
I'm just shocked by it.
It's not something
that
you've
makes
seen.
sense.
It's not something that you've
And people.
Right.
Well, I think with me, like.
But the polite is the impolite way, or the input. I asked her. I thought in a politically correct way was, how did you get into industry?
Yeah.
The other way to be it is like, I can't believe a woman is in charge of cigars in the United States. That's
That's not even polite.
Yeah.
That's neither.
But that's where it's both. It's not polite. And
I'm
it's
laughing
not
because
correct.
it's impolite because it's funny.
It's both,
Yeah.
but it's. But that's where it comes into. It's a slippery road, and back to what you said about the bullshit, right? About your kid saying bullshit.
Yeah.
I would jump on my son the same way, not because I don't swear. I swear if anybody that's watching that knows me.
But for
It's one of
different
the things
reasons.
I work with, but like my son's 13 years old, and in my house I'm the adult. My wife's the adult.
Mm-hmm.
I can do whatever I want because it's my house.
Yeah.
And I'm not stupid or naive to think that he doesn't say the same thing when I'm not around, but out of respect and politeness, you're not going to say that in front of him.
Yeah, and I think that's a grooming thing for the workplace, for strangers, things like that. Like a respect level for people, like for elders or for superiors, or just for being polite.
Right. I mean,
like you want to do it in front of other people, like that's your choice. However, this is why you don't do it.
Right.
But my point, I'm sorry, Jake,
No,
real quick. I think you get on them for different reasons. I think the whole gay comment versus bullshit, there is a similar reason to get on that child about it, but the fundamentals of why those are wrong terms are absolutely different.
oh yeah, and if I look at the ones that are completely wrong, is the gay comment. It's like I told him, it's completely unacceptable. We're not having this discussion again. I mean, if this happens again. And I hear that, there's going to be a lot of problems. Like if he swears, I'm not an idiot to go like, oh, my kid's never going to swear again. But if that happens again, there's going to be some serious.
I think it's a learning moment. I mean,
but again,
this is why you don't say that. This is what that word means. This is where it comes from, and all that stuff.
And it came back to what you talked about. What Ray brought up is about talking to people and figuring out where people are coming from.
Yeah.
Because if you say to me, like we talked about the bald thing, I make a joke out of it. When you say, oh, veterans, I can be honest with you, I get really pissed off and offended when people make statements like, well, you better watch out for a veteran. He's gonna, they're messed up and they're gonna come in here with a gun.
It's like postal.
It pisses me off and it's offensive.
That's really shitty.
But listen to it. But it's an acceptable thing. I mean, people say it all the time, and that's the thing about political correctness. If you're gonna take political correctness all the way down the road, it's crazy because you're gonna have to protect so many different people. Mm-hmm. When politeness should be, you should really understand that. What's going on with veterans in the world? If you know that and you have that term of why we all are going, we have PTSD because it's a serious problem.
Absolutely.
We have veterans that are killing themselves at astronomical numbers. So you should be polite to understand how bad that what you're saying is saying. I mean, it's just as bad as my son calling a video game gay. But who's taking that stance like Jay talked about, the political stance to say, oh my gosh, we're gonna protect these people, and you shouldn't say that. No one's doing that. I mean, would you guys agree or not?
No, I don't.
You don't think people are taking a stance for us?
I don't. I think now like in high school, I did the 22-day challenge where you do like 22 push-ups to raise awareness for the 22 veterans that commit suicide a day.
More than that. It's like every
now,
hour or something like that.
No, I think it is. It's like, I can't remember the exact number. I think it's in the 20s, but it's higher than I think any other Democrat.
It's
out there.
It just irritates me to see that obviously you're not supposed to say certain things, whether it be gay or black or whatever. You know, it's these certain things that are touchy subjects that have been considered touchy subjects.
There's a
now.
reason they're touchy, first of all.
I get that.
Oh yeah,
but
we've all agreed to that.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think being polite just constitutes as being a good person and doing that, and not doing those things. And where you have people that are looking to get offended of someone calling them a lady or you're speak. I mean, what am I supposed to, you know, besides all or team, it's like, I just get tired of listening to political correctness, because then even if you are trying to be polite, you never know what is constituting as offending them. And
No, you don't. There's so many people.
It's a rough road to go down. I guess is my point.
I keep going back to my background as far as like, and I use it as like real like kind of surface level examples of like that person had a bad day type thing. But that's where, again, I think if you're being polite, again, you have to define polite per person on what their upbringing was. I mean, there's no agreed upon thing depending on how. If you want to go global, there's no agreed upon politeness, because every culture is different. You cannot negate the fact that what is polite in one culture is not polite in another. That happens. That is an actual fact. So that can be city to city. I mean, as we've gone bigger, like, you know, there's agreed upon it, and that's where you get into the politically correct thing, is that if you're part of a city, a township, part of a state, part of a country, like, that's the politically correct side of it, and that's the overall movement of the society that you're involved in. That's just how it works as a group. You can't make up your own mind by yourself and be offended on that side of it, or be oversensitive or less than sensitive about that. You can just choose on how you live your everyday life.
So are you saying that political correctness is an overall agreement and politeness is not?
Yes.
So what about cultures in different regions of the world? So it's not global.
Right. Globally, there are different cultures. There are different norms of what is being polite, if you will.
But what about politically correct? Because I don't
Again,
think...
that's where I look at bodies of people as far as... I look at being polite as an everyday thing. I think Chay might have said it, you know, initially, or someone said it on the Facebook Live, where politically correct is usually, like, to Chay's point, it's dialing down to more specifics, and then it gets into the bigger picture. Because there is a story behind it. Because it wasn't that long ago when you look at, like, women not being able to vote in the States. You look at civil rights movement in the 60s. Like, all of these things started at one point, in my opinion. I'm not defending or saying something's right or wrong in any way. I'm saying this objectively. That's where we're at, where we talk about, like you had mentioned, like transgender. You have, like, hello ladies, you don't know if one of them was transgender. That all starts somewhere, and that's where it's like you're offending someone. Well, fast forward 20 years later, that offense might have been a part of a greater movement that now there are more rights that you didn't even fucking think about. You didn't think about that was offending someone because you weren't in that house that they were raised in. You weren't in that neighborhood they were raised in. You weren't in that high school they went to. So it's like there's a whole socialization story there that you, as a person, that's where I think being polite to your best ability to defend someone by being polite, that's out of your control at that point, in my opinion.
Like your intention.
That's it. You can hold a door open for a lady, for a female, or for a man, but it's easier, like the whole chivalry thing. You can hold a door open for one female, and they're going to be like, thank you very much, I thought chivalry was dead. You can hold a door open for another female, and they're going to be like, I can hold my own door, you can just go ahead. So again, I'm not offended by it. It kind of takes me back a bit, but I'm like, okay, hold your own fucking door.
Yeah, but then people take that to the other end. It's like, that's where the people that are like super anti-politically correct, I don't say anarchy, but the people that go, oh, I should be able to say what I want to say, freedom of speech. That woman's just a I've heard, we've all heard it. Like someone says that, some woman yelled at me for holding the door for her. She's probably a lesbian or something. But that's where people say it. But
why do you think they created the automatic opening doors?
Right.
Did you ever think about that?
Yeah.
Did you ever think about that? That is a social movement to take it out of the equation.
Do you really think so?
I think there's some guy out there probably did.
That's kind of deep. I like that.
Yeah, think about that.
But no, but it just comes down to
Talk about a revolving door.
the politically correct. We keep going over it, but it's just like I feel like the hard part about political correctness to me is I wholeheartedly 100% believe that political correctness has made the world a better place for a lot of people. but it's like I keep going back to is we make jokes about it. You make jokes about the ball thing. You make jokes about I'm not making a joke about the PTSD thing, but it's interesting what gets protected. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like
totally.
what is protected? I'm still telling you, if I were to put that up, if you had 2 cases going to an HR and said, oh my gosh, these guys at work are calling me, all of us are crazy, we have PTSD.
Absolutely.
As a veteran. Number one, someone, may just go like, what's your problem? Like, what are you talking about? You're a veteran. Why does that bother you? But if you're a woman who says this guy keeps calling me honey or babe, be realistic. And this is where I think people are. This is where you have to be real. Is what is going to get the visibility and what is going to cause the problem.
Well, you're behind. So that's where I look at it.
When in the big picture, you should not say to. You should not say you should not call a woman. We're different. I'm the oldest person by far in here. That you should not call a woman honey, babe, whatever. I call my wife babe. Like that's what I call my wife. I don't call my sister hey babe, hey honey. Like that is we all know that is not right.
Right, but then
the guys will say, "Well, I'm 55 years old. I grew up calling women babe. This is just being politically correct." It's not. It's just it's not right.
It's just a pride thing.
Well, what I was going to say about the whole veteran thing, I think even though war's been around forever, right? But typically, different cultures. Now, this is a day, 2018, where a lot of veterans are coming back and basically are being assimilated back into society. It was happening during the 1900s a lot. It's happening more and more now because it's just an everyday thing where people are being deployed and coming back, being deployed, coming back, and all of a sudden that. So yes, there is more of a well-known, and I think it goes hand in hand with a lot of the people being diagnosed with different personality disorders. There's a lot more Western medicine out there as far as prescriptions, and that's another epidemic I don't want to dive into. But what happens is I think that you guys, as veterans, guys and girls, I use guys, there's another one, right? There's a politically correct thing. I can't say guys because then it's men, right? But
type in a disclaimer for that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for all to all that are coming back from overseas or whatever type of military experience, you have experiences. Now you're coming back to everyday life and you're doing civilian life, and I think you all are in the beginning stages of that, right? So like you guys are actually in the beginning. I know I keep saying guys. You guys are actually in the beginning phase of fast forward several years. Hopefully, there are movements that are making this more and more prevalent because it is something that is not okay to joke about or to comment on. So there are a lot of HR departments, there are a lot of movements socially and from a political standpoint that are making that. The fact that like something as simple and almost as if you will, silly as the 22-day challenge, that was a movement that they said, let's do it on social media. And that was everywhere, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people, and did it really raise money or anything like that? Probably not. It's like the ice bucket challenge. Did a lot of people actually donate money to that? Probably not, but it was something that you do, and then you post it on there, and everyone like, all right, challenge you shit. It raises awareness. That's like the beginning phases. So my hope for that, for example, when you talk about like being politically correct or even just being polite about the whole veteran side of it, is that this is where you do have to, in a sense, fight for that. So there are a lot of veterans that are probably going into HR departments, that are going into these like social movements to basically get that being recognized as an actual thing that you can't joke about.
But I don't speak for every veteran that's out there.
I know you don't. I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm saying
PTSD and talk about PTSD, let me tell you what, that's a hard thing to even admit to that you have. There's a lot of people that do that. There's a lot of people that have the courage and strength to do that because it's a hard thing to say.
Absolutely.
But honestly, like people think a lot of people, military people, you went to war, come back here, these tough, men and women that you've been through everything, but you're broken inside. You're broken, and it's gonna be. I think it's harder. More veterans are doing that to stick up for themselves, but it's really hard to do that because the first thing when I say that I come back broken is I'm admitting weakness.
Yeah.
And
which is against your.
Which is totally against what we tell them is you can do anything. You can do, and that's why if you look at again, I don't speak for every veteran out there, or
not specifically, but in general.
That's a big thing with what's going on right now. And then when So I think the movement, I don't think the movement is really, I hope it is led by us, other veterans that finally step up and say it's okay to do this. It's okay to say, I can't do this anymore, I have a problem. You know, I drink some nights till I can't, think anymore and pass out because of something that's going on. But that's a whole different topic, but it just goes back to, again, if I were to bring that up to HR right now, am I protected? Is someone really going to look out for me and go to you and say, hey, Steve, you really need to stop saying that? I hope that happens, but I really believe,
but that's
I don't think it does.
That's what I mean when I'm talking about, humanizing this whole situation of, whether or not something offends you or not with political correctness. I value being polite over political correctness because more often than not, the problem with the political correctness issue, if someone says a derogatory term, it's what they've either been taught, it's their socialization, and it's like the understanding you talk about, Steve. It's like, well, if someone doesn't hold the door open for you, or if someone doesn't say thank you or you're welcome or something like that, being polite, then it's not valued anymore because it's looked at as the understanding of it, you being a good person, you're understanding that, oh, well, maybe they have a bad day or they just don't do that, but they're impolite in my eyes and they're an asshole for it. So, and maybe that's the way that I escalate it, but the political correctness thing, I think most problems derive from just sheer ignorance. I don't think it's based on a hateful thing. There are issues where it is a hateful thing and it is a derogatory term, but I think for the majority of people, it's more of an ignorance thing. So when you dehumanize this whole situation, then you never get told that that's wrong. It just goes above you, or you get in trouble, or someone just thinks you're a bad person that's swept under the rug, and that's kind of a deeper hole than what I wanted to get into, but I think that adds some value to what we're talking about.
I do, but I think sometimes, when someone says, oh, I said it earlier, people say, hey, I'm from the South, so I'm allowed to use the N-word, that's how I grew up. It's not a defense to me. That's just, it's wrong. So if you grew up in Georgia, that's wrong.
Okay.
But people will tie in and say, that's where I grew up, and I went to, but it's just not acceptable. And so political correctness should be, when you do those kind of things, there should be repercussions to it. But when you start talking about what Ray brought up about calling a woman, hey ladies.
Yeah, hello ladies.
Or like you said before, and it happens all the time when someone says, hey guys.
Yeah.
And you get really offended about it. That's where I have a problem with it. And for you, and some groups do go a long ways. Like somebody at HR talked to the women, they talked to Ray, and they brought an issue to it. It's really kind of like, where does someone say, talk to Ray and say, what did you mean by that? And for them to go back to Ray and say, Ray didn't mean this in any bad way. I don't think it's a two-way street, if that makes sense.
But there's no levels. There's kind of this gray area where it's like what you know, and then there's levels of what you should not do.
I think there's a level of education there.
It's kind of, but that's what I mean, like the ignorance. If you say something, like I remember the first time, because I was still in that kind of weird half-generation thing like you, Steve, where it's like if you say, well, something's gay, or heaven forbid you say faggot, that's very, very offensive nowadays. And it's like, when I was a kid, it wasn't really, cursing was more of an issue than saying those things. And I remember the first time that I said that, and, I think being a good person as I am, the first time someone mentioned that to me, I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to say that anymore.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a learning moment, because like you bring that up as childhood. Who out there ever played in different generations here a little bit? Like, you're 44, 45, you said? 45. I'm about to turn 38 here, and you're 23 still. Yeah. I can't remember. You're March, so 23. But
Steve's birthday is next week, or this weekend, if anyone wanted to know.
All right. So my thing is that who hasn't played that game in the backyard? You guys done playing, flag football or tackle football? Smear the queer.
Yeah.
So smear the queer. when I was 8, 10, 12, 14 years old, I never even thought for a second of the same thing, in a sense, possibly to your child saying gay. I never said that. It was just smear the queer basically means that game is this. Has nothing to do with the fact that queer was used for a homosexual, and that's where at some point was, you catch the football, you're the gay one, we all have to just jump on top of you and just tackle you. That's the root of that name of that game. I mean, that's just what it is. But that to your point, you didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about something like that, it's interesting you bring up that, is it's all about the way you say it. You know, it's that derogatory sense, but because remember, I don't know if you remember this, Steve, but with Instagram a couple years ago, you know, through Gay Pride Week in Columbus, there was a thing on Instagram where it just said queer and with a rainbow behind it, and you could put it on your story and stuff. It's like, so what is the correct vernacular with shit that where you can't offend somebody? Is it just the way you say it?
If you're referring to someone that is homosexual, I think you can say gay. We don't need to dive down this whole homosexual thing.
I'm just saying, like, the problems occur with sheer ignorance, because it's like people think that there's a right way in being polite in saying something that is politically correct, and then someone gets offended by it. So
but you brought up a point. It's not to cut you off, but you brought up a point.
Okay.
How old are you, Dustin?
30.
Okay, so we've got a pretty good age group.
Boom,
The
boom,
game
boom,
you talk
boom.
about,
Yeah.
the game you talk about right now.
Yeah.
You know, referring to that is not acceptable anymore.
No, it isn't. But here's my thing: is like, how do I say that to my nephew, who's less than 10 years old, and I say, hey, we played this game, and it's called. So what you do is like you throw the ball up, you know, that's 500. You throw the ball, like you're running around, and everyone has to tap you. I don't know what that's called now, so I'm not a parent. So if you have your 13-year-old,
it would be interesting.
If you have your 13-year-old and you say, hey,
what it is.
I'm going to teach you this game, and when he says, what's it called?
we called it Hail Mary.
What's that?
Hail Mary.
Yeah.
That's what we called it. Because
but that's what I'm saying. That's an interesting question to do. Yeah, it did change. Like, I'm not going to say that that's not. You could go, like, yeah, that'd be interesting to go back and figure out the root of where that came up to. But it's like, but irrelevant what it is, but that term did get tied onto a certain demographic that it is a very, like, it's a horrible thing.
So what was the chicken and egg?
Right.
What
So
happened
like
first?
right now, if you're 45 years old, my age, right? Who I played the game. I remember the term, right?
Yeah.
If I were to start telling my kids right now, if they're saying, hey, gave the term of, like, get the guy with the ball, and I was like, no, guys, it's called smear the queer.
And then the neighbor kids come back, and then your neighbors come over and like, Chay, what the fuck,
that's
man?
Wrong, but that's wrong. And if some guy, if we're sitting around drinking, and one of my fellow parents is defending that,
he's like, that's just what you call it, man.
But that's where you're really not lack of education, you're ignorant, and then you're also, that's where you're being, that's a good term, where you're being politically incorrect.
Well, I think,
it has, whatever you thought the meaning was, it has an effect on someone else. Another one to get away from that is like when you call somebody retarded, right?
Yeah, that was the other one with gay back
That
in
was
the 80s.
another.
Like,
That's
I have a coworker of mine who has a severely mentally ill sister, and I never thought it. It's we've said it all the time, and he actually, I said a couple times, he actually, came to me and said, please don't, about my sister, which we know about, and it's, he takes care of it, it's very admirable, but, after that, I was like, I could say to him, the easy way, and a lot of people do, they say, well, that's what I've been calling, that's what I said, I don't mean that, but it doesn't matter what you mean, it's what you're saying when you mean it, it's what the meaning of the word actually means to other people.
Well, I think that's where we get down to it, in my opinion, with the polite or politically correct, incorrect, whatever you want to focus on, we could say politically correct. I think at some point, that's where you have to continue. We talk about this a lot on the show, is that you have to keep learning, keep moving forward, and all that stuff. And that's really where it is. So you're going to, everyone that's listening, everyone that's on this podcast tonight, in the garage, earlier or now, it's you are going to offend someone, and then it's a matter of, do you find out why? And sometimes you'll never know. It might be a complete stranger, the person you're holding the door for, not being held for when you're walking behind them. You don't know what the fuck the backstory is. That's fine. Even the fact that I said fuck offends some people, and it's like, when you ask me, anymore for me, I say that because it is something that is, it does, people say like, oh, you curse, you have a lower vocabulary. Maybe I do, but I say that and I get my point across and I feel like I do to my purpose. And if it offends you, you tell me that and I'll try not to do it. But that's where it's like the root of it, where it's like the whole bullshit thing is like, I disagree with the social agreement that bullshit is a bad term. But it is a thing. So when kids are involved, it's like you have the upbringing. Like, I'm not religious anymore, but being brought up in religion taught you certain morals that I do agree with. So it's like, I see the value in that. So again, kids are, I want to say, a little bit different. You want to teach them the social norms so that they are able to be, in a sense, socialized in a way that they're going to succeed. I get that. But as an adult, the whole smear the queer thing, you're sitting around with your neighbor friends and they say, well, that's what I called it. It's like, at that point, once you've been educated, it's up to you to either change your ways or to be polite, choose to be polite, or choose to be politically correct, whatever the circumstance is. And I think polite is more general, and I think politically correctness is more specific based on case by case. But again, you have to open up that scope so that you do address everyone, because there's a lot of different factors and different people and all that stuff. But once you choose that, you either change, you either do that, you grow as a person, or you do that whole thing that Chay said. It's like, oh, I grew up in the South. I'm allowed to say that because that's what we always said. It's like, fuck you. No, you're not. You know what? You are allowed to say that. Absolutely. I'm not telling you can't say this word or that word or think that way.
If you say that word and you get fired or
that's your choice.
You get your ass beat.
What I'm saying is you can't say that because it's politically correct, or you're just a fucking asshole that you just don't, like, yeah, you were raised in this area. Now you're here. I'm looking at you and you're here now. We don't say that here. So you say that. All I'm telling you is that this is why we don't say that. This is the history behind it. Let me educate you really quickly, whether or not you listen to it or you walk away. Now it's on you. Now you can be looked at as being an absolute asshole, a racist, a sexist, whatever it is. But if you firmly believe that, I'm not going to change that. I can't do it. I may not, like, next time you call me to get a beer or you want me to, like, stand up for you, you're on your own.
Yeah.
Guy, girl, whoever, like, older, younger, whoever. Like, I told you. I don't have your back anymore based on this because of that. I'm not saying you're a bad person or a good person. I'm saying I always use, like, you're an idiot because you just want to stick so close to that when you know that that's not what everyone else thinks. So now you're just going to keep doing it now almost out of defiance and, like, standing up for your roots. Get the fuck out of here with that.
Yeah, but
like, that's not that important. There are certain issues, though, that people do deem very important. And that's where I agree with sometimes people are oversensitive with this stuff. But at the same time, I think that there are a lot of people that are oversensitive in certain people's eyes, but there's a reason that they feel that way, or they have that chip on their shoulder, or they have that backing where they were brought up to be a fighter because of where they started.
Good point. I don't know. I think we've talked about a lot of good things tonight. I don't know. This has really just been a discussion between, politeness and versus political correctness and kind of like what we just think about it.
Yeah.
And like to start the closing remarks, to be honest, I've been kind of quiet throughout this podcast because normally I'm just thinking about all the things that you guys are saying, Steve and whoever our guest is, and tonight is, Chay. And I think when it comes to political correctness versus politeness, there's not obviously you can look it up and there's kind of a defined meaning, but in the real world, I don't think that you can really define it because it all lumps together in a sort of way, but it is also different.
Yeah. Because
when you're talking about offending people, there's things that we know now, right? Ignorance and having knowledge about, what should be said or how you should talk to certain people. And I believe his name's not Jonathan, but way back in the beginning, he mentioned, one of our listeners mentioned on the live about how there's one of those times where I lose my train of thought.
That's all right.
he mentioned the fact about how, there's a difference between, wow, I'm completely dead here.
Chay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Closing remarks.
Sorry.
And then Jacob, we'll circle back.
Jacob, we'll come back to
sorry
that.
about that.
But I mean, I guess like what we talked about before is I think, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's really cool to be part of this and hanging out in the garage finally. And I appreciate having me on. And like I said, we had some good conversation, but I guess how I ended is with political correctness is, when you say be politically correct to someone, it still has this negative annotation to it. I would word it to be polite. Like we talked about it a couple of times, we've all said it, people are looking to be offended. We all, no matter what you think, are offended by something.
Yeah.
I mean, we could say that, and that's how I would do it to someone else. If you're really going to stick to your guns and say, gosh, you just asked me to be politically correct, it's more of like you're really asking someone to be polite. Like, because there's something I can find in every person in this garage right now out there. Someone could say something that's going to offend you and upset you, and you wouldn't want that done to you. So don't do that to other people. Don't tie on this the stigma of politically correct has gotten a bad rap. When I think if you, like I said, I think in the beginning is if you're polite to people, politeness breeds political correctness in my mind. That's how it goes, man. If you're polite to people, you're gonna offend someone at some point. But if you're polite and they tell you, hey, I don't like this, please don't refer to me being bald. I really have a problem with that. I spent $3,000 trying to grow my hair back, and that's just being polite. You want someone, because everybody could. We do that all the time. We say to people, no, I did not. I just started shaving. I probably spent $3,000 on shaving cream, but that's what I think about is just to listen to people and respect how they feel, because you don't want the people. It done to you. You said before, treat people how you want to be treated. Did you find it now?
Nope, I'm completely lost. I'm sorry. I'm not the best host tonight. So.
No, you're good, brother.
But,
you're good.
Well, I think, my closing remarks is I feel like I repeat myself sometimes, but it's like always growing, learning and all that stuff. And I think that comes into a lot of this. I think, again, I'll say our topic was polite, or being politically correct and being polite. I think that's the verses there. And it's not like, to your point, Jake, it's not always that much different, and to your point, Chay, is like it breeds the other. But again, when it gets to politically correct, I think there are certain things that it's like you can't say that anymore, not because it's rooted in being polite, but it's an education thing.
Yeah.
Being politically correct, that was the whole thing where, the movement, as far as I think it is out there. There's a lot of organizations that are going after the issue of PTSD. Veterans, and whether or not you have PTSD, there's just veterans that serve the country that have done it, whether or not you were deployed or not. I mean, like you just made a choice in life, whatever the reason was. Maybe that's the only job that you thought would be good for you, for your family, whatever it is, or you feel like you wanted to fight for what's right. Whatever the reason that you chose to enlist. Now it's after the fact. I think there is a movement there. I think it's still in its levels of infancy, because people are living longer, there are more people coming back, there are different levels of service, all of that stuff. But that doesn't mean that even if you're reading a list of people that passed away that you did know in basic or whatever, whatever the situation is, you can list them off. There's hundreds or thousands of situations on why you can come back, whether you saw something or that something like that. It affects you. I mean, anything, whether or not you're overseas serving in the military or you just have everyday life, that's where like depression is rampant, anxiety is rampant. And you can go down the different avenues of why that is, whether it's the even like depression. I mean, is it the nutrition in our country? Is it the things that have changed over time? People living longer, people seeing different things, whatever it might be. You know what I mean? Social media is a big one. As far as for civilian especially, but also when veterans come back and you have all that. Well, those are those things that I think a lot of the things where you're being politically correct, or the movements for those things. You talk about just in the last 100, 150 years, that's where I brought up, the women's suffrage, the civil rights movement, all these things. At one point, people were like, fucking someone needs to do something about it, but you couldn't talk about it because now you're going against social norms. And then you have those groups that are doing it, whether it's literally based on you have a vagina or a penis, or you have dark skin or light skin, that's the difference, as far as surface level stuff. That's why people fight for it, and that's where politically correctness gets into. I think there is value there, and I think that there are people that are oversensitive. I will say, being polite is sometimes the great equalizer, I will say. You treat others like you want to be treated. If you treat people like shit and you literally just are that person that you feel like you should be treated like shit for whatever reason, that's why you're doing it. I don't want to say that's better or worse or valued or not, but it's like, at the very least, you are treating people like you want to be treated. You know what I mean? So if you're just a bitter person and you're upset, or you have emotional issues, you have chemical imbalance, you had a shitty childhood, and that's how you were socialized, I'm gonna try to help you out. I'm gonna try to tell you, like, that you can't do that, whatever. Like, if it's me, I'm gonna do that. But being polite and being raised in a way that you believe is right, live that through, but always stay open, because I'm gonna tell you what, your mom and dad, the neighborhood, the church, the school, whatever it is that you were socialized in, they didn't have all the fucking answers, and they are very specific to where you were raised. So that's where it's like, no matter if you stay in that, it's changing times, you change your location, whatever it is, take your core and keep adding to it, because I think that's where the politically correct side of it is. You don't have to necessarily bend over or anything like that for people to think that you are doing the right thing. But at the same time, it's like, if you just shut them out, that guy that you use as an example, like, well, I was raised in this area, and I can say this because that's how I've always said it. It's like, yeah, you know what, you can, but you just shut down, man. You stopped growing at fucking 23 years old, and now you're 55 years old. That's a tough life. But that person might go to bed, sleep soundly at night, and think that on his deathbed, he's like, yep, did it right. He got what he wanted out of his life. She got whatever she wanted out of his life, or her life. But that's where it's like, I encourage everyone to take your core values and look at these issues as far as being polite or politically correct, and not look at either one of them as being negative. Polite is tough to look at being negative, but politically correct, I think, has a negative connotation sometimes, like you said, Jay. And I think that, you alluded to that too, Jake, is that you just have to keep educating yourself. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it at all times, but if you have a purpose, where you have a movement, or if you're trying to make a change, you're trying to make a point, sometimes you do have to. That's where we had an episode on everything is sales. Yeah. Sometimes you have to be politically correct to get your point across, and that's that fine line you walk. Are you jeopardizing your values and your morals to do that, or are you just opening yourself up, and you might actually think, like, you know what, I get it. I get why that is an issue, or that's a problem for me to say or do that.
Yeah. Well, overall, I think this was a great discussion tonight. I know I kind of botched it at the end of it, but I can't remember what we were talking about. Anyways, Chay, thanks for being on tonight. This was awesome. Definitely, since I personally have gotten to know you, you're a great dude and great man. Definitely a polite person. This has been awesome. Steve and I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you for our viewers and everything. Don't forget about our giveaway, the Bulleit 10 year that Dustin was gracious enough to get done for us. It says Bourbon and BS podcast. Remember, go to our pages, Instagram and Facebook, like, follow, and tag 3 friends. And that actually have some people doing it on my personal page, and we'll kind of include that because I posted it. So between Steve, Dustin, even Chay, if you posted, we'll add everyone into that. But remember, those are the requirements. You gotta like the page, follow Instagram, and then tag 3 of your friends, and then must be 21 or older to join this whole giveaway thing. But we want to thank our sponsors. Tinderbox Decent, thank you for, well, they didn't really provide that Inspirato, but we have it.
Roundabout way, yeah.
Roundabout way.
Yeah.
So remember, you can come to Tinderbox Decent within the next week. Get 15% off any size of the Inspirato Red, Macanudo Inspirato Red. If you mention the Bourbon and BS podcast, thank you, BS Cigar Company, Brian and Steve. This is probably our 3rd cigar of the night, is always the BS. So thank you guys. Yeah. And then Altadis Cigar Brand, or Cigar Company, thank you for allowing us and sponsoring us to have the Nicaragua AJ Fernandez tonight. H. Upman. And
General Cigars for coming around the first time. We're going to have those guys on.
Yeah.
at some point coming up for sure.
Yep.
And stay tuned. Turn on your alerts because this week is a prime example. We will not be airing next Wednesday. So if you're tuned in all the way to the end right now, we'll put it on social media as well. But stay tuned on either Sunday or Monday. We're going to be doing a live broadcast for this next episode because it'll still launch normal day on podcast. So those of you like Nick, who's in New Jersey, who's a BS supporter now at this point, hopefully he likes his cigars. He's smoking one when he listens to this. Not on the train, but maybe afterwards.
That'd be politically incorrect to smoke on the train.
Yeah, it might be politically incorrect. But yeah, next episode is going to be a little off. This will be our first non-whiskey Wednesday, so we're going to have a whiskey something, probably whiskey Sunday maybe.
Fun day, Sunday fun day.
Sunday fun day with you guys.
We hope to get Hotel Tango on. You know, the live members are watching, you know, Chay and I are wearing the Hotel Tango thing. I'm all over the place. Anyways, Artisan Distillery in Indianapolis, Indiana.
One of the things you did forget to mention about them is it's actually a veteran-owned,
which is very cool.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And I didn't say
Crane,
yeah,
who owns it, so you know, they go out there and support veterans. He's doing a great thing.
And they actually made great whiskey.
Wow.
The barrel pick that we picked was very, very
It'll
good.
be coming soon, I hope.
Yeah, the Ginty did it.
I told Jay, do you see Hotel Tango?
They do here, they just released here.
And that's their flagship, really. That's their 8-year-old.
Yeah.
And that's what we picked.
We got to throw a shout out to them because I heard next week they're going to be here in the Columbus area.
16th they'll be at OPA.
Yeah, at OPA. Thanks for the date, but it's the 16th. Go out there and see them. Support a great,
absolutely,
a great distillery and a great, fellow veteran who's I think done some great stuff. I mean, if you ever get a chance to get out there, it's a great place to be.
It's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. We'd love to get more whiskey, distilleries on and master distillers and stuff like that. We're kind of just in the cigar phase because obviously Steve has a lot more connections and with the cigar industry, and I don't really have a lot of connections with the whiskey.
We're getting there, yeah. It'll be good.
We're getting there, but again, thank you everyone for listening. Episode 37, Chay, thank you for joining us.
35 still.
35? What did I say?
37.
Did I really?
Yeah, we're jumping ahead. 37 is going to be a great episode.
I really said 37
would be good.
Yeah.
Man, this new job's killing me. Anyways, thank you everyone. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Good night.
Cheers.